Welcome to the Fantasy Audiobook. Grand Line. Heroic Spirit of the Straw Hat Pirates. Chapter 41. I'm so sorry, Krabatar, that Usopp said that to you. But I believe Usopp didn't mean it. Please don't be angry with him. A gentle female voice suddenly sounded from a giant tree in the villa in Zailuobu village, causing Luochi, who was in a lurking state, to open his eyes. Looking down, the person speaking was a young woman with short shoulder-length hair who looked a little frail. In front of her was a tall man in a black suit and gold-rimmed glasses. With just one glance, Rossi recognized the identities of the two people, Kia and Captain Crow disguised as Krabatal. Miss Kia, I think you should stop associating with that Usopp. You are so noble, and that man is just the son of a fourth-rate pirate. You being in such constant contact with him will only take its toll on you. Crow pushed up his glasses with his palms and said to Kia seriously. Actually, Usopp is quite nice. Kia smiled awkwardly, then took out a box from behind and handed it to Crow. Krabatal, this is my gift to you. Gift? Crow frowned. Yeah, it's a gift to thank you for taking care of me for 3 years. I originally planned to give it to you later, but I didn't expect what just happened. So I wanted to give it to you in advance, and I hope you can forgive Usopp. After Kia finished speaking, Crow reached out and took the gift box. After cutting it open, inside was a pair of brand new gold-rimmed glasses. I saw that you haven't changed your glasses to new ones in the past 3 years. Your current glasses are also old, so I thought of giving you a brand new pair. Give it a try, Krabatar. Kia's lips twitched slightly as she looked at Krabatar expectantly. Crow looked at Kia, then at the eyes in his hands, and fell silent for a moment. After a long time, Crow finally did not put on new glasses as Kia expected, but walked into the villa without saying a word. Krabatal, what's wrong with you? Don't you like this gift? Kia asked quickly. However, Crow still didn't say a word, as if he didn't hear Kia's inquiry at all. Instead, he used his right hand to crush the gold-rimmed glasses Kia had given him. Krabatal, what's wrong with you? That was a gift given to you by Miss Kia. At this time, Meili, who was standing aside, couldn't stand it anymore. He opened his hands and came to Crow to block his way. But Crow didn't even look at him as he punched Meili away. Is it finally going to start? Single quote. Seeing this scene, Luochi immediately cheered up. From the moment he arrived at the villa, he had been waiting for a similar scene. Unlike Usopp, rather than persuading Kia, he hopes that Crow will take the initiative to expose his true identity in front of Kia and Meili. Krabatal, what are you doing? Why are you doing this to Meili? Kia ran to Meili, and seeing Meili coughing up blood, he turned to question Crow. I'm just tired. Crow looked at Kia coldly, and his eyes felt extremely strange to Kia at this moment. It's been 3 years. I've been working here for 3 years, but the gift is just a pair of brand new glasses. This is not enough. This is far from enough, Miss Kia. Hearing this, Yaden felt incredible. Krabatal, if you don't like my gift, you can just say so. I can exchange it for another gift. There is no need for you to beat Meili. Really, what if I say the gift I want is all your property? As soon as these words were spoken, Kia and Meili immediately opened their mouths. At this moment, they thought of what Usopp said about Crow in the villa. Krabatal, are you really the captain of the Black Cat Pirates? Meili took a breath, raised her head and questioned Crow. So what if it is, so what if it's not? Crow walked up to Meili and looked at Meili condescendingly. Meili, I have been quite distressed these days working with you. I don't understand why you can laugh and laugh every day, but I can only live in calculations. But it's finally over. After today, I won't have to face your laughing face anymore. I just need Kia to stay. As for you, go to another world. After saying that, Crow raised his right foot and stepped hard on Meili's chest. Don't want. Kia looked sad and wanted to reach out to stop Crow, but how could she reach out faster than Crow's kick? Just when Crow's right foot was about to land on Meili, a strong wind suddenly passed by several people. Bang! Crow frowned, glanced at the broken floor with confusion, and then quickly turned to look diagonally behind him. Hey, hello, Captain Crow, I hope you won't blame me for disturbing your fun. With a smile, Luochi held Meili in one hand and Kia in the other and said hello to Crow. Just now, he used, shaving, to snatch Kia and Meili away from Crow's feet. Who are you? Give me back Kia. Crow frowned and looked at Luoqi with an unkind expression. Kia and Meili looked at Luoqi in surprise, but soon, Meili seemed to realize something, and her face turned from surprise to fear when looking at Luoqi. You are Luoqi, then, that reward. I'm Usopp's partner, don't worry, Mary. Rossi smiled as gently as possible at Meili. He understood that he was different from Crow, who was deaf to what was happening outside the window and only focused on his inheritance. Meili must be concerned about the intelligence from the outside world. Even the little gangsters on Onion 2 can see his reward order. As Kia's dedicated housekeeper, how could Meili not know about his reward order? Partner. Meili blinked. Although he had doubts in his heart, the fear in his heart was gradually fading after seeing Rosie's smile. Although Luoqi was a criminal with a bounty of 800 million, he saved Meili's own life after all. Are you Usopp's partner? Can you please tell me where Usopp is now? Is he safe now? The Black Cat pirates didn't hurt Usopp, right? Kia asked quickly. Although she didn't want to admit it, after experiencing the scene just now, Kia already understood that Usopp was not lying. The Black Cat pirates will really come to this village. As an insider, Usopp is also very likely to be retaliated by Crow. At this moment, Kia really wanted to know about Usopp's safety. Don't worry, he is very safe now. Compared with this, we should still care about the current problem. Luoqi raised his head and looked at Crow with a gloomy face in front of him with interest. Unfamiliar face, you must not be from Xiluobu village. When and where did Usopp find a helper like you? What is your purpose? Crow faced Rosie, unable to conceal his murderous tone. Purpose? Needless to say, since I am Usopp's partner, of course I want to help him deal with you and the Black Cat pirates. As Luoqi said this, he released Meili and Kia from his hands. To deal with me and the Black Cat pirates, it's just you alone. How could it be one person? Even if I don't count my other partners, Usopp also has good power. Haha, a son of a fourth-rate pirate, a man who can only lie, does this mean he has good strength? Although I don't know where you come from, your vision for finding partners seems to be quite lacking. As soon as these words came out, Luoqi immediately laughed. Fourth-rate pirates. The pirate group that Usopp's father belongs to is one of the 4 pirate groups that rule the top of this sea. Usopp's father is one of the top leaders of the pirate group, and the bounty on his head is dozens of times that of your Crow. To call such pirates fourth-rate pirates, you are the one who has no vision, right? After saying that, the smile on Luoqi's face took on a sarcastic tone. Meili and Kia looked at the man standing in front of them in disbelief. They never expected that Usopp had such a background. Meili thought about the reward that Luoqi had, and she believed in what Luoqi said. Unlike Meili, Crow didn't believe Rosie's words at all. Enough of the nonsense. Can you leave Kia behind you to me? If you are willing to obey, I can give you an easy way to die. Crow pushed up his glasses and stepped towards Rosie. Interesting, I would like to see how easy your death is for me. Luoqi put his hands on his hips and calmly watched Crow approach him. Crow stopped talking. When he was 2 meters away from Luoqi, he suddenly increased his speed, clenched his fist and hit Luoqi's face. Bang! With a crisp sound, Crow flew backwards faster than when he pounced, and hit the ground heavily. What's going on? Crow had a nosebleed and looked at Luoqi with a puzzled expression on the opposite side, who had unknowingly stretched out his left fist. That's it, you can't even see clearly how I punch, right? Luoqi frowned slightly and looked at Crow disappointedly. You're looking for death. Crow was instantly angered by Rosie, and he stood up with his hands on the ground regardless of the doubts in his heart. Just wait, I will come back to you. After saying that, Crow turned around and walked quickly towards the villa. Tisk, why should I wait for you? Rossie's voice suddenly appeared in Crow's ears. Before Crow even had time to show a shocked expression, the back of his head was held down by Rosie. The next second, Crow's face came into close contact with the earth. The powerful force directly blinded Crow and completely caused him to faint. Really, are kids fighting? What do you say? Just wait, I will come back to you. I originally wanted you to practice with my partner. But since you can't even see clearly the punch I just punched, you are not even qualified to train with Luffy and Zoro now. Rossi clapped his hands and looked at Crow in disgust. He understood that Crow just wanted to get his weapon, but Rossi didn't intend to play with him. Luffy and Zoro, who have obtained the heroic spirit template, are getting stronger every day. They were able to catch and see clearly the punch that Luochi threw just now. Since Crow couldn't even see clearly, Rossi naturally had no reason to let Crow go look for Luffy and others. Well, thank you for saving us. At this time, Kia helped Meili to Luochi and saluted Luochi solemnly. Although she still felt sorry for Crow being a pirate, seeing Crow's vicious behavior just now, she also understood who was the good guy and who was the bad guy. You're welcome, Miss Kia. Usopp is my friend, and it's my duty to help you. Luochi waved his hand and said casually. But sir, you did save me. If there is anything I can do, please tell me. Since Miss Kia has said so, let me make a request. I hope Kia and Meili can help us get a good pirate ship. Now we can't be called a pirate ship. Of course it's possible. Kia nodded slightly and turned to look at Meili beside her. Meili recalled that she immediately stepped forward and promised to personally design and build a pirate ship for Luochi and others. In this way, things about the Meili will be settled. Single quote. The goal was achieved, and Luochi smiled with satisfaction. Then I'll take Crow and leave first. There may be other members of the Black Cat Pirates at the entrance to Silab village who need to be dealt with. With that said, Rossi took off the collar of Crow's back shirt and planned to take him to the entrance of the village. Wait sir, can you take me with you? Kia stepped forward and grabbed Luochi's sleeve. Huh, aren't you afraid of danger, Miss Kia? I'm afraid, but after all, the pirates came to this village because of me. If I ask you and Usopp to help fight against the pirates, I won't be able to calm down. In that case, I'll take you over to have a look. Luochi nodded slightly, walked to Kia and put a hand on her shoulder. Meili. Wait, Mr. Luochi, please don't do such a dangerous thing. Rossi. I'm leaving. Before Meili could finish speaking, Luochi jumped into the sky and disappeared into the villa with Kia and Chloe in the blink of an eye. Meili stared blankly at where Luochi and Kia were standing, and it took a while before she came back to her senses. That Luochi is so strong, Miss Kia should be fine. No, I have to go take a look. The conscientious Meili raised her legs and ran out of the villa with her eyes fixed. Hua, Mr. Luochi, so fast, so high. In the sky, Luochi quickly stepped on the moon steps and ran towards the port of Zailuobu village. Kia on his back felt the strong wind passing by him quickly, felt the perspective in the sky, and suddenly shouted excitedly. Haha, this is trivial. But we're almost at our destination. You have to do what I said later and keep silent for now. Luochi smiled. Of course I am willing to do what you said, Mr. Roach, but is there really no problem if you don't take action? Kia turned her head and looked hard at Luochi. No problem, my partners are all strong, and Usopp is also a man who takes action when it's time to take action. Hold on tight, we're going down. Luochi patted Kia's back with his hand, and then landed on the branches of a dense giant tree. He held Kia's back and sat next to him. As for Crow, Luochi casually hung him on a branch nearby. Thank you, Mr. Roach. Kia smiled at Luochi, then turned to look straight ahead. Because Luochi deliberately found a relatively close one, even Kia could clearly see Luffy, Usopp and others standing at the entrance of Silabu village. Usopp is really here. There are two people I have never met before. Are they your partners, Mr. Roach? Kia asked curiously. That's right. The one with the straw hat is Luffy, and the girl with orange hair is Nami. There is also a swordsman who wields 3 swords. He is probably lost somewhere. As Rossi said this, he used the Haki of Knowledge, and sure enough, he sensed Zoro's aura a few kilometers away from Luffy, Nami, and Usopp. Similarly, I also sensed the pirates jumping off the pirate ships on the shore of the island. A swordsman with 3 swords. Kia was about to ask when she suddenly heard a killing cry coming from not far away. Looking up, I happened to see the pirates rushing up from the entrance slope of Zailuobu village. Seeing this scene, even though she knew that Luochi had great power, Kia still became nervous unconsciously. These pirates are finally here. Seriously, where did that guy Zoro go? Didn't I just ask him to prepare some props? Why haven't he come back yet? Nami took out several magic cards from her waist pocket and looked at the pirates across from her with caution, while not forgetting to complain to Zoro. He, it doesn't matter. Nami, Usopp and I are here and can stop them. Luffy bumped his fists and looked eagerly at the pirates directly opposite him. Hey, don't add me, you two are the main force. Usopp's legs were trembling, and his heartbeat began to beat louder and louder. Having said that, when I saw the pirates raising their weapons and shouting to kill, they rushed up from the slope. Usopp still mustered up the courage, raised his slingshot and fired an explosive arrow that Rossi had given him previously. Boom! With a loud noise, the pirate with the title of the book was immediately blown away, and the other pirates who were originally excited fell silent instantly. They turned to look at the place where the explosion occurred, and found a huge boulder falling down due to the explosion. The pirates who were close were immediately crushed to the ground by the boulders and could no longer get up. Zangao's eyes narrowed, and he immediately raised his head to look around, and soon saw Usopp behind a boulder dozens of meters away from them. At this moment, Usopp still kept shooting, completely stunned on the spot. So awesome. Is this explosive arrow so powerful? Usopp said in surprise. Obviously, even he did not expect that the explosive arrow would be so powerful. As Luo Chi told you before, this explosive arrow has a strong explosive strength. After his transformation, the power increased to a higher level. It's a pity that there are not enough materials, so he only has a few arrows on his body. Nami said. At this moment, two boomerangs suddenly struck, attacking Nami and Usopp respectively. Nami sensed the flow of air, recognized an ordinary magic card and knocked the boomerang away. Usopp, on the other hand, was also in danger at the last moment, escaping Zango's attack by throwing himself to the ground. It's you, Long Nose. Zangao caught the boomerang that flew towards him and looked at Usopp, who got up from the ground. Zangao frowned slightly. Usopp knew it. When Usopp saw him talking to Crow, he suggested that Crow should kill Usopp. But at that time, Crow let him go on the grounds that he didn't need to care about Usopp. Zangao didn't expect that such a person who was looked down upon by Crow would stand in front of them at this moment and kill several of his men in one move. Yes, it's me, the great Captain Usopp. Usopp put one hand on his hip, raised his hand and pointed at Zan angrily and shouted. How dare you, you weird guy, lie to me, and I'll show you the way. Let me tell you, I have 8,000 men. If you are willing to leave now, I will let you go. Otherwise, don't blame me for being rude to you. As soon as these words came out, there was an immediate commotion among the Black Cat pirates. He obviously believed what Usopp said. Calm down, that long-nosed guy is a big liar, and everything he says is false. Or have you forgotten the horror of Captain Crow? If we were late, he might kill us all. Zangao's words made the pirates calm down again. You fool, how dare you lie to us, watch me kill you. The impulsive pirate rushed towards Usopp brandishing his sword. Seeing this, Usopp quickly took out an explosive arrow and wanted to attack. But because he was too nervous, the arrow fell from his hand. Seeing this scene, the pirates who rushed towards Usopp immediately started laughing ferociously. Not far away, Nami shook her head and planned to use her own methods to help Usopp. At the same time, Luffy had already pulled his rubber fist and rushed towards Usopp. Just as the pirates were getting closer to Usopp, a strange sound began to sound. Boom, boom, what's going on? What is this sound? Strange, why do I suddenly feel a little scared? The pirates who were rushing towards Usopp stopped instantly and looked around in surprise. Soon, they found that the source of the strange sound was not somewhere else, but Usopp standing in front of them. Luffy and Nami, who had already started to move, also stopped and looked at Usopp with interest, who was lowering his head and looking gloomy. It started. Luffy and Nami laughed together. What's going on? This guy doesn't seem right. 856323613 Linglong. Why, I suddenly feel that this long nose is so scary. You think so too? It's so dangerous. I feel that if I rush up, I will die. What should we do? Or, we retreat. The pirates standing in front of Usopp were trembling and wanted to retreat, but Captain Kuro's threat was still there. They wanted to move forward, but Usopp at this moment made them feel quite scared. For a moment, several people fell into a difficult situation. Hey, what's wrong? Are you scared? Why don't you continue to attack me? At this time, Usopp suddenly spoke in a low voice. He slowly raised his head, and his face, which was originally slightly funny because of his long nose, turned out to be extremely majestic at this moment. The pirates who saw Usopp's face up close and heard Usopp's low and majestic voice only felt that Usopp's body in front of them was getting taller, and slowly they had come to the point where they could only look up. What's the situation with that long nose? Zangao frowned, and under the influence of the sound of Usopp's Emperor engine, he also felt a little fear in his heart. He turned his head and looked behind him, and sure enough, he saw that the pirates who were originally grinning and planning to massacre the village were actually backing off at this moment. No, this can't go on. Single quote. If we retreat like this, Captain Kuro will definitely chase us to the sea and kill us all. Single quote. We must find a way. Single quote. Zangao suppressed the fear in his heart, raised his head and stared at Usopp with his eyes, as if he wanted to see through him. At this moment, the pirates standing in front of Usopp could no longer bear the pressure from Usopp, and knelt on the ground, praying that Usopp would let them go. However, Usopp showed a cunning smile on his face. When the pirates in front of him buried their heads deep in the ground, he took out a slingshot and shot several steel balls at the back of their heads. The weak back of the head was hit, and several pirates fell to the ground immediately. After doing all this, Usopp's face became serious again, and he strode towards Zangao and others. Who else? As soon as Usopp said this, the pirates took a step back. Seeing the pirates were afraid of him, Usopp's serious expression collapsed instantly, and he laughed triumphantly. Because of this laugh, the pressure he originally brought to Zangao and others was instantly reduced. No, this kid can't be strong. Single quote. Otherwise, Captain Kuro would have dealt with this guy long ago. Single quote. This strange voice, is it hypnosis? He is using hypnosis to make us afraid. Single quote. Zangao's eyes lit up, and he immediately took out the round boomerang in his hand and turned to look at his men behind him. Everyone, look at me. Remember, when I count to 3, all of you will be extremely powerful and full of courage. Hearing Zangao's words, the pirates who didn't know what to do immediately looked at Zangao as if they had found their backbone. 1, 2, 3. As Zangao's seemingly magical voice fell, the faces of all the pirates instantly became ferocious. Even the muscles on their bodies swelled a circle at this moment. Roar! The pirates roared like wild animals, and someone punched a boulder nearby, breaking it. This situation made Usopp, who thought he had the situation under control, panic. Especially when he saw these pirates waving their weapons like wild animals rushing towards him. Usopp, don't be stunned, we are fighting now. Nami shouted to Usopp, and the cards in her hand began to condense into sharp wind blades. Usopp nodded, looked at Nami, and was about to answer her. The next moment, he opened his mouth as if he had seen something terrible. Be careful, Nami. Nami frowned and turned her head to look behind her. She found that Luffy had a ferocious face and rushed past her and rushed to the hypnotized pirates below. What? Nami's eyes widened. Luffy, what's wrong with you? Nami, Luffy seems to be hypnotized. Usopp jumped to Nami's side and said worriedly. But just after he finished speaking, he was shocked by Luffy's performance again. Those powerful pirates who looked like monsters were actually knocked away the moment Luffy approached them. No pirate could stand up after being hit by him. Just when Usopp thought that all the pirates would be killed by Luffy, a string of red mist suddenly rushed out of Luffy's body and instantly formed a huge, ferocious red ghost. The moment the red ghost appeared, a huge pressure was pressed on all the pirates, including Zangao. The pirates who were originally hypnotized also woke up instantly. They hadn't reacted yet and saw the red evil ghost on Luffy's body. Their legs softened and they almost fell to the ground. What's wrong with this kid? Why did he become like this after being hypnotized by me? At this time, even Zangao couldn't help but take a step back. Just when Zangao and the pirates thought that Luffy and the red ghost on Luffy were going to attack them, the red ghost actually raised his hand and slapped Luffy in the face. The powerful force even caused Luffy to crash into a hole several meters deep on the cliff wall next to him. Hey, Luffy! Luffy was slapped away by the red devil. Nami, let's go find Rosie for help. Usopp looked at Nami beside him in horror. No, that's right, we have to find Rosie. Nami nodded in a daze. Unlike Usopp, Nami knew that the Red Devil was part of Luffy's power. Seeing Luffy being slapped away by her power, Nami felt a sense of worry for no reason. But before she could take action, Luffy suddenly jumped out of the wall holding his stomach. At the same time, a series of gurgling sounds came from Luffy's stomach. I'm so hungry. Meat, I want to eat meat. Luffy raised his hands high, and actually left the remaining pirates behind and rushed directly into the interior of Zailuobu village. Wait, Luffy, we are fighting, what's wrong with you? Nami pulled Luffy's cheek hard and asked in confusion. Nami, I'm not sure. Just now I felt that the red demon seemed to appear in front of me, and then he didn't say anything, but I felt that he seemed to want to wake me up. But the price is that it will use up a lot of my body's energy. Luffy kept his footsteps and said anxiously. Obviously, he was very hungry at this moment. So, it turns out that the red demon has the ability to wake you up. The gourmet cell demon is really a weird thing. Nami sighed, and the strength in her hand unconsciously decreased. At this time, Luffy broke free from Nami's arm and ran away. Luffy, the pirates haven't been dealt with yet, eat after they are dealt with. Nami yelled angrily. Hee, with Zoro here, nothing will happen. You idiot, Zoro got lost and didn't even know where he ran off to. Nami, are you calling me? Also, what's going on with Luffy, why did he run away? At this moment, Zoro suddenly appeared behind Nami, and looked at Luffy's disappearing back in confusion. Hey, when did you appear? No, where did you run off to, you directionally challenged person? We've been fighting here for a long time. Nami poked Zoro's shoulder hard with her finger, and the anger accumulated in Luffy was vented directly on Zoro. At this time, she also understood why Luffy left with peace of mind. Obviously, he had seen Zoro returning just now. Tisk, it's just a little late, what's the big deal? Zoro smacked his lips and turned to look at the Black Cat pirates. It looks like many people have been knocked down. Let's go, Nami, let's deal with these people as soon as possible, and then go see what's going on with Luffy and Rosie. As he said that, Zoro pulled out 3 swords and walked towards the Black Cat pirates. Really, except for Rosie, 1 or 2 of them are worrying. Hey, it would be better if Rosie stayed here. Nami sighed tiredly and followed Zoro with the magic card. I'm here to help too. Usopp took a deep breath, took out the last few explosive arrows, and walked to Nami and Zoro with the sound effect of the Emperor engine. With the combined efforts of the 3 of them, soon only Zango, Buffy, and Sam were left standing among the Black Cat pirates. The reason why the 3 of them are still standing is not because of how strong they are. Simply because Zoro and Nami focused their energy on dealing with other pirates. Therefore, the task of dealing with the 3 of Zango naturally fell on Usopp. But, why is this guy so slippery? We are obviously faster in terms of speed. Why can't we catch up? Sam put his hands on his knees and stared fiercely at the cunning Usopp directly in front of him. It's strange. This guy is not very fast when he is facing us, but why can he be twice as fast when he is running away with his back to us? Bujie gasped and looked warily at Nami and Zoro. Like Bujie, Zango was also wary of Zoro and Nami, who were watching leisurely. This vigilance is far greater than that of Usopp. Usopp can only be described as slippery and difficult to catch. But Zoro and Nami said that the real strength is the strength shown. Hey Usopp, do you want our help? Solve it quickly, and we can go drink quickly. Zoro put the knife on his shoulder and said with a grin. At this time, he had already learned from Nami that Luffy was going to eat meat. Naturally, he also thought about going to a restaurant to drink. Hey, no need. I feel like I can kill these 3 guys. Usopp smiled obscenely, secretly thinking about what kind of ammunition to use against Zango and others next. At this time, although the more powerful explosive arrows had been used up, Usopp was not worried. The battle just now had fully proved that Zango and the others could not catch him. Although the name is a bit strange, the ability to turn around and run with the B button to sprint is really powerful. Single quote. Although it only increases my speed when escaping. Single quote. King's ability is quite effective. Single quote. Usopp thought to himself, took out 3 rotten eggs from his pocket and fired them at Django, Sam and Butch with a slingshot. The strong smell of rotten eggs completely ignited the anger of Sam and Butch. The two ignored Zoro and Nami, who were watching eagerly from the side, and jumped up and rushed towards Usopp. "Hey, come and catch me, come and catch me." Usopp stood tall and retreated, turning around and running away without hesitation before the 2 men approached him. After several attacks, Sam and the others failed to attack Usopp, and he himself was half dead from exhaustion. "Stop it, Sam, Butch." At this time, Zhang appeared beside the 2 of them. He raised his hands to hold their shoulders, and glanced at Usopp, Nami and Zoro. "I admit that we have completely underestimated the power of this village. You are the stronger one now. But I advise you not to interfere with the affairs of this village. Escape now. If Captain Crow comes here, all of you will inevitably be killed," Zhang said. Upon hearing this, Zoro and Nami raised the corners of their mouths slightly, while Usopp burst into laughter. "Ha ha ha, do you still think Crow can come here? The strongest one among us is over there in the villa. I see, Crow must have been defeated by Vice Captain Razi now, ha ha ha." Hearing this, Zhang frowned even more. "Long nose, I think you'd better not joke about it. Captain Crow can let you go once, but that doesn't mean he can let you go a second time." Zhang shook his head and planned to use his eloquence to persuade Usopp. But at this moment, a voice interrupted Zhang's plan. "He's right. It's better that you don't continue to wait for Crow." As the voice appeared, Luochi descended from the sky with Crow and Kia. After landing, Rossi casually threw Crow himself in front of Zhang, Butchie and Sam. "Kia, why are you here?" Usopp ran 2 steps quickly and looked at Kia in surprise. "Sorry Usopp, I misunderstood you. I asked Mr. Rossi to bring me here. I want to see the situation here with my own eyes." Kia smiled apologetically at Usopp, and then looked at Nami and Zoro gratefully. Previously, Kia saw Nami, Zoro, and Luffy resisting the pirates. For these people, Kia was grateful from the bottom of her heart. Meanwhile, on the other side, Butch and Sam saw Crow's miserable look clearly, and their expressions changed immediately. Without waiting for Zhang's order, the 2 of them turned around and ran towards the pirate ship docked at the port. "Idiot, don't be impulsive," Zhang shouted loudly, trying to stop the 2 men's actions. "Nami and Zoro are difficult enough. Now there is a stronger Razi who can defeat Crow, and escaping is simply impossible. Escape without permission is very likely to cause the situation to develop in a bad direction." However, Zhang's voice did not reach Sam and Butch's ears after all. Hey, running away like this, isn't that too disrespectful to me?" Roche shook his head, and a crossbow quickly emerged from his right wrist. Bow of prayer. Usopp's eyes widened, and he recognized the weapon on Rock's wrist at a glance. Roche glanced at Zhang, who was standing there motionless and sweating, and the crossbow swept across his body and pointed at Sam and Butch. As 2 arrows were shot out, one leg of Sam and Butch was shot through immediately. With their legs shot through and the poison on the arrows, the 2 could only fall to the ground helplessly and wail in pain. Zhang, right. Roche touched his bow of prayer and turned to look at Zhang. "You are smart and didn't move. So my arrow didn't fall on you. You should be thankful. The poison on this arrow is definitely not something that pirates of your level can get. After being hit, you can only die in pain like those 2. Roche said as he aimed the prayer bow at Sam and Butchie again. "So, let's get rid of the pain as soon as possible, what do you think?" Roche smiled at Zhang and turned to look at Sam and Butchie. "As you are tasting this power for the first time, you are lucky to some extent. Then, dissipate, both of you." Prayer bow. After Roche finished speaking, a strong magic power gradually rose from the prayer bow that was released by the real name. The next moment, a ray of emerald green light flew out of the prayer bow and lightly passed over Butchie and Sam's bodies. Zhang looked at Butchie and Sam with fear, but he saw the strange expansion and explosion of their bodies. For a moment, a greater fear struck Zhang's heart. At the same time, on the other side, "Ms. Nami, what's wrong?" Kaya looked at Nami, who suddenly came to her, put her shoulder on her and turned her back to Rosie with some doubts. "Nothing." Nami glanced at the miserable state of Sam and the others behind her, then adjusted her heartbeat and put on a gentle smile on her face again. "I heard that Miss Kaya is very rich. Considering that I have made so much effort this time. Can Miss Kaya pay me some reward? Nami made an, okay, gesture and stuck out her tongue playfully. Lord Rosie, I have moved all the treasures on our pirate ship to you as you said. What do you think you need me to do? As long as you say, I am willing to do it no matter how hard it is. Zhang rubbed his hands and looked at Rosie in front of him flatteringly. The miserable state of Sam and Bush became the last straw that completely overwhelmed Zhang psychological defense. At this moment, he only wanted to hold on to his life. As for the rest, he didn't care at all. Okay, you can go now. Remember to bring your companions with you. Roche waved his hand, carried the treasure chest that Zhang brought with both hands, and walked towards Zoro and others. With Rock's instruction, Zhang was delighted and began to move his companions with great effort. Even the dead were not spared. Now that he was about to leave, he didn't want to make any mistakes. Is it okay? Let those guys go. If they turn the ship around and come to this village in the future, and we are not there, it may cause certain danger to this village. Zoro took a treasure chest from Rock's hand and said while walking beside Roche. Don't worry, among those who are still alive, whether it is Zhang or others, I have broken some bones with my strength. In the future, I am afraid that they can only live like ordinary people. If they use too much force, they will be in unbearable pain. Even if they come to this village, they will not be the opponents of ordinary people. Roche laughed. As expected of the vice captain, you were really thoughtful, but where did you learn these methods from? Zoro, don't forget what I used to do. I have plenty of methods like torturing people without killing them. Is that so? You are really a terrible man. Fortunately, such a man is not an enemy. Haha, if you can say this without exuding such a strong fighting spirit, I will think that you really think I am terrible. Give up, Zoro, I am not interested in fighting with you. Compared with this, let's go to find Luffy. As he said, Roche directly passed Zoro and walked to Nami, Kaya and others. A few days later, in a sea area not far from Zailuobu village. On a navy warship with a huge crane written on the sail. I didn't expect that Captain Crow, who had been beheaded, was still alive. Should I say that you are worthy of being praised as a pirate with good strategies? The Captain Crow who was beheaded was arranged by you, the real Captain Crow. Tell me, who made you and your crew look like this? Crane folded his arms and looked at Crow and Zhang and other members of the Black Cat pirates who were imprisoned opposite him. Crow raised his head and looked at Crane in front of him with a gloomy face, feeling indescribably depressed. He never thought that his 3-year plan had just been ruined by Luo Qi. After waking up, he appeared on the Navy warship again. Thinking of this, Crow glared at Zhang on the side. Captain Crow, please don't look at me like that. I can't help it. I finally escaped from that fool Rosie, and I don't want to run into these Navy. Zhang looked desperate. They thought they had escaped, but before they found a safe place to stay on the sea, they ran into a Navy ship again. And it was a warship of the Navy headquarters chief of staff. Huh, did you say Rosie? Was it Rosie who defeated you? Where is that man now? Gion's eyes lit up, and he quickly asked Zhang. They have been looking for Rosie on the sea for several days, and now they suddenly got news about Rosie, so Gion was naturally very concerned. Are you looking for Rosie? Clo frowned, his eyes swept past Gion and fell on Crane. We are indeed hunting him. From your appearance, you have a deep hatred for him. Why don't you tell us the information about him and let our Navy avenge you? He keenly sensed Clo's emotions and moved a chair to sit opposite Clo. Ha ha, ha ha ha, interesting, really interesting. Although I am very unhappy with your Navy, I will be very happy if you can get rid of that Luo Qi. Listen carefully, we encountered those guys in Zailuobu village. Sister He, are we going to Zailuobu village now? According to the time, Luo Qi and his group may have left the village. In the cabin corridor, Gion asked as he followed He forward. No matter what, we have to go and take a look. Gion, this matter is not only related to Rosie. You also heard that the boy named Usopp who just joined Rosie's pirate group may be the son of Jesus Bu, a cadre of the Red Hair Pirates. Suru frowned slightly, his face was serious. Even she never expected to meet someone who might be related to the 4 emperors in this place. Gion nodded. With her knowledge, she naturally understood Suru's thoughts quickly. In the Straw Hat Pirates, Luffy is Garp's grandson, and Rosie is a vicious criminal who killed the celestial dragons. If the son of a cadre of the four emperors comes out, the weight of this new pirate group is too heavy. Apart from anything else, if Usopp happens, the Red Hair Pirates may also take action. I just heard you talking about Rosie. Have you found Rosie? At this time, a mature female voice sounded beside Suru and Gion. You're still here, Naomi. Should I have told you that you can leave? Gion frowned and looked helplessly at the treasure hunter Naomi who was following him. Didn't I say before that I have nowhere to go? Now I just want to find that pervert Rosie. Since you also want to find Rosie, can't you take me with you? As long as you agree, I can join you as a navy. Naomi said seriously. Seeing this, Gion shook his head with a headache and turned to look at Crane. Since she is so determined, give her a chance and let her start as a recruit. Since she is a woman, she can naturally integrate into our big family. Crane stood on the deck, looked at Naomi and said, Recruits, go change into navy clothes. Then go to Zailuobu village with us. If Rosie is still there, we will arrest him. Hearing this, Naomi immediately became excited. She saluted Crane awkwardly, turned around and ran to the female marine next to her, intending to ask her for a navy uniform. Then, let's set off too. Following Crane's order, the navy ship immediately turned around and headed towards the direction of West Rob Village. West Rob Village, coast. A triangular sailing ship with a back mast is docked on the sea. The sheephead-designed bow made Rosie, who had just followed Mary to the port, recognize the first pirate ship of the Straw Hat Pirates, the Golden Mary, at a glance. That's right, after a few days, Mary has successfully designed and produced the Mary. Mr. Rosie, this is the sailboat I made for you. You can call it the Advance Mary, it's my masterpiece. It has a separate warehouse, bedroom, kitchen, etc. It will definitely play an important role in your future sailing. Mary pointed to the Advance Mary and said proudly. Seeing such an excellent sailboat, Luffy immediately boarded the deck impatiently, looking here and there for a while, and finally jumped to the bow as if he had found the target. Thank you, Mary. Talk to our navigator about the ship, she will write down the key points. Rosie patted Nami on the back and pushed her in front of Mary. Then he wanted to follow Luffy and Zoro to board the Explorer. Please wait, Mr. Rosie. At this time, Kaya's voice sounded behind Rosie. Anything else, Miss Kaya? Rosie turned around and glanced at Usopp who waved to Kaya and jumped on the Mary, and then his eyes fell on Kaya's face in front of him. Mr. Rosie, thank you so much for coming. You not only saved this village, but also finally gave Usopp the opportunity to pursue his dream. Although these berries are not much, please accept them. Kaya bowed to Rosie first, then took out a small suitcase and handed it to Rosie. Nami, who was originally discussing the matter of the Mary with Mary, looked over immediately. Rosie opened it and took a look. There were tens of millions of berries in the suitcase. Considering Kaya's family background, Rosie did not refuse and directly raised his hand to throw it to Nami. Seeing this, Nami almost jumped up with joy. Mr. Rosie, you love Miss Nami very much. Kaya sighed. It's just a matter of division of labor. If she manages the money, Luffy, Zoro and others will not spend money recklessly. As for me, I have enough pocket money. Rosie shrugged and smiled. Miss Kia, this time we really say goodbye. We'll meet again in the future, huh? Roki was about to say goodbye to Kia for the last time, when suddenly a burst of cannon fire reached his ears. He turned his head and saw more than 10 black shells. Most of the shells fell towards the melee, and a few fell towards the position of Luauchi and Kia. Seeing this scene, Kia closed her eyes in fear. Tisk, these women are still haunting. Roki's observation hockey unfolded, and soon he saw the Crane's Navy warship on the sea not far away. Lan Zhao. Roki raised his leg and raised a huge wind blade, intercepting all the shells in the air. Kaya, melee, if the Navy comes to ask, just say that I stole this pirate ship from you. Nami, let's go. Roche patted Kaya's shoulder, then quickly passed Nami, put his right hand around her slender waist and took her to the melee. Take care, Mr. Roche, Usopp, everyone. Kaya came back to her senses and waved goodbye to Roche and others on the melee. Miss Kaya, let's leave quickly. We can't cause trouble for Usopp and Mr. Roche at this time. Mary quickly came to Kaya, took her hand and ran towards the direction of Xiluobu village. Mary is not stupid. The bombardment just now made Meili know that he and Kaya would not bring any help to Roche and others if they continued to stay here. On the contrary, it might cause the Navy to misunderstand their relationship with the pirates. At the same time, on the Meili, after arriving on the deck, Nami soon saw the Navy warships in the distance. Why is there a Navy ship here? Rosie, are they here to chase you? Nami gritted her teeth and looked at Rosie with an unhappy face. Nami, shouldn't we run away first than to do this? Use your navigation skills to keep the Mary away from those guys. Rosie patted Nami's shoulder and took the initiative to walk to the stern. Although Nami was helpless, she could only follow Rosie's instructions and began to command Luffy, Zoro and Usopp to sail the ship away from the Navy warship. Relying on excellent navigation skills and the clever settings of the Mary, the ship gradually began to distance itself from the Navy warship. And this scene was naturally not what Gion and others on the Navy warship wanted to see. Gion jumped up directly and chased after the Mary with moon steps. And after Gion, there were several powerful female Navy officers following Gion's footsteps. What? I can fly in the sky like Rosie. What should I do? They are catching up. Is my pirate career going to end immediately? Usopp ran back and forth on the deck of the Mary in a panic, and the Emperor engine began to automatically deploy unconsciously. Idiot, calm down. Follow my instructions and drive the ship. Nami punched Usopp on the head and roared angrily. After doing all this, she turned her head and looked at Rosie. Dear Vice Captain, those people are coming for you. I believe you have a way to stop them. Hearing this, Rosie shrugged, drew out the famous sword Kinpira behind him, and smiled. Anyway, I will try my best to stop them. At this time, Zoro and Luffy also looked over. One of them rubbed his hands, and the other slightly drew out the Wado Ikimonji from his waist, without any fear on his face. The elite pursuers of the Navy headquarters. If possible, I really want to see how powerful they are. These are Zoro's words. Rosie said that there is a candidate for the Navy Admiral on that ship, and the Navy Admiral is the strongest force of the Navy. I really want to see how strong she is. Luffy said with a smile. Since the two of them obtained the heroic spirit template, their strength has increased faster than in the original work. So far, except for the competition between partners, they have not felt a stressful battle. Now that the Navy is chasing again, Zoro and Luffy are naturally quite interested. Luffy, there is a woman on that ship who is a Navy of the same period as your grandfather. To some extent, your grandfather is afraid of her. What do you think? After listening to what I said, do you still plan to fight them? Rosie said without looking back while guarding against Gion and others who were getting closer and closer to the Mary with moon steps. Grandpa is afraid of her. Luffy shuddered, thinking of the scene of being beaten by Garp since he was a child, his fighting spirit that had just been raised instantly withered. At this time, Gion finally came to the place near the Mary. Seeing Rosie standing at the stern, she wanted to use the long sword in her hand to chop a flying slash directly. Facing this tentative slash, Rosie exhaled, turned his body and kicked out a storm kick, forming a crescent-shaped wind blade that hit Gion's flying slash. With a bang, the two wind blades stirred up a gust of wind and disappeared in the air. Rosie, you lecher, stop right there. Explain that thing to me clearly. Gion shouted. What is that thing? Vice Admiral Momosato, can you stop being a riddler? What a mess. And, you fool, give me back my sword. You, who can't use a sword at all, are not worthy of holding Kinpila. Hey, who told you that I can't use a sword? Roki carried Kinpila on his shoulders, without the slightest intention of returning Kinpila to Gion. Gion, let's not waste time talking to that guy, just attack like this. That's right. As long as we stop the ship he's on, Vice Admiral Suru and the other sisters on the warship can support us. I believe that this way, this Roki can't escape. Kinpila will naturally return to your hands. At this time, the other female Navy officers who stepped on the moon steps had also come behind Gion, and they all persuaded Gion to take action now. Gion nodded, and the powerful armament Haki climbed up the blade, and he swung several swords in the direction of the Golden Mary in rapid succession. In an instant, more than 10 sharp flying slashes fell from the sky, and the entire Mary was included in it. Seeing Gion take action, the other female Marines did not show weakness, some performed storm kicks, and some waved long swords. Soon, more flying slashes fell from the sky. You really didn't hold back at all. But the Mary we just got can't be cut down by you like this. Roki's mouth corners rose, a cold red light flashed in his eyes, and the breath of ghosts was released from his body. Zoro, who was about to use the moon-breathing sword technique to intercept the flying slashes in the sky, felt the breath of Roki and looked over instantly. The breath of Kokushibo. Single quote. Oh, then let me see how you use his power. Single quote. Zoro thought to himself and slowly put down the long sword in his hand. After witnessing Razi use the power of Kenpachi Zaraki to cut the sea with one sword, Zoro has long wanted to see Razi fight with a sword again. For this reason, he has often challenged Luochi. However, not only did Razi not accept the challenge, he rarely used the sword in future battles with the enemy. At this moment, seeing that Luochi was not only going to use Jin Pilao, but also the power of Black Death Mo, Sauron naturally did not intend to take action again. Luochi gathered the Jinpilao in his hand above his head, and streaks of blood-red energy climbed up the Jinpilao blade. In just 1 second, the original long knife turned into a blade. The handle were all covered with eyes, and there were alien blades with different blades. This is not over yet. After Luochi used Heishimo's vampire technique to transform the long sword in his hand, he even covered the blade with Liang level-armed domineering. Breath of the moon Jew-shaped falling moon connected faces. Luochi quickly waved the sharp blade in his hand and launched a series of intricate and invisible slashes at Gion and others in the air, creating multiple interlaced blade winds with countless round moon blades. The flying slashes launched by Gion and others were quickly strangled when they encountered Luochi's slashes. After that, there were even extra breath of the moon slashes flying towards Gion and others, forcing Gion and others to use their own methods to defend themselves. Is this the sword form after the moon breath 6 form? It's so strong. Sauron clenched the handle of the knife and looked closely at Roki's back. With just this blow, Sauron understood the gap between himself and Razi. Even if he integrated the breath of the moon into his 3-sword style. But any sword skill he has mastered now is not as strong as the sword skill Luochi is currently performing. Thinking of this, a strong desire to challenge surged into his heart. You guy, when did you learn to use a sword? Gion, who was knocked back several meters, widened his eyes and stared at Luochi's face. At this time, she suddenly felt that she couldn't understand Luochi. Obviously they were chasing Luochi, but Luochi never showed any sword skills from beginning to end. How come now, I can suddenly use a sword? Moreover, his proficiency in using a sword is completely unlike that of someone who has just mastered the use of a sword. Who knows? Luochi shrugged, and suddenly his eyes narrowed and he looked in the direction of the Navy warship. There, the crane actually jumped out from the bow of the Navy warship, and also walked towards the Meleon moon steps. Although I want to prove to you that I am worthy of this sword. But if there are other people around, it will really affect my state. So of course we still have a chance to meet again. Now that Crane has attacked, Luochi naturally has no intention of continuing to talk to Gion. Asshole, don't even try to escape. After finally finding an opportunity to catch Luochi, how could Gion give up? She stepped hard on the air behind her with her right leg, accelerated her speed again, and landed in the direction of the melee. Everyone, find something and grab it. I'm going to speed up the melee. Luochi shouted to his friends behind him and put Jin Pilao back into the scabbard behind his back. Then he jumped off the deck and used the moonstep to control his back against the stern of the melee. Although Luffy, Nami and others didn't understand what Luochi was going to do, they all found a place to fix themselves. After Rossi used his knowledge to confirm the status of Luffy and others, he opened his hands and stretched out in the direction of the crane and the Navy warship. So, goodbye everyone. Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon. Boom. Following Luochi's sharp shout, a huge explosion suddenly sounded. His forward-stretched hands suddenly shot out an energy beam containing terrifying energy. In just a blink of an eye, the energy beam came to the crane and engulfed her. At the same time, Rossi then fired the powerful back force of the Purgatory Unparalleled Explosive Heat Wave Cannon, and actually used his back to push the melee forward at high speed. In the blink of an eye, the melee flew several kilometers away. Sister He. Seeing the crane being engulfed by the beam of light, even the Navy warship behind the crane was shrouded in a dazzling white light. How could Gion still have the intention to continue chasing Luo Qi? She quickly turned around and rushed towards the crane, who was pushed away by the beam of light. Sister He, are you okay? After some time passed, when the beam of light finally dissipated, Gion looked worriedly at the crane in front of him. At this moment, although he still maintained a calm posture, her clothes, hair and other places had many defects and damages. Don't worry, I'm fine. He nodded slightly and turned to look at the Navy ship that was pushed several kilometers back by his back. After seeing the Navy warship and the fact that there were no wounded on board the Navy warship, He Cheng breathed a sigh of relief. That Luo Qi can also release lasers in addition to sword skills. How many abilities does that man have that he hasn't used yet? Did he always lie to us before? Gion clenched the long knife in his hand and looked towards the sea in the distance. However, at this time, there was no shadow of the melee on the sea. After Suru used the moon step to jump back to the deck of the Navy warship, he looked at Gion, who fell next to him from the sky, and said, "It's a little strange that Roche can use a sword, but this may be because he didn't have a suitable weapon before, so he only used fists and feet when he had conflicts with us before. However, it's a little strange that he can use the laser just now. I don't know if that guy got some strange devil fruit." At this time, the rookie Marine Naomi ran to Suru with a new Navy code and handed it to her. Vice Admiral Suru, Vice Admiral Gion, the swordsmanship that Roche used just now is similar to the swordsmanship that the pirate hunter Zoro used. Although Rock's swordsmanship is much stronger than Zoro's, their swordsmanship can also trigger the crescent sword energy. Considering that Roche once used the same card as the little thief Nami, I suspect that Roche intends to teach his abilities to his partners. Naomi said. Hearing this, Suru nodded in agreement. It seems that this Rosie is not only a dangerous wanted criminal, but also an excellent teacher. In this way, there is a reason for him to join Monkey D. Luffy's pirate group. Maybe this guy has the idea of training new pirates. As Suru said this, he took off the Navy coat that was slightly burned by the Purgatory Warrior's explosive heat wave cannon behind him and put on the new Navy coat handed over by Naomi. Vice Admiral Suru, do we still want to continue chasing? At this time, a female Navy asked. He groaned for a while, and after thinking for a while, she shook her head. The strange laser just now pushed us to move several kilometers backwards, and Luo Qi also used this laser to push their ship to move several kilometers. Although the pirate ship is small, it is flexible. It is difficult to catch up with it at this time. Although I don't know the price of Luo Qi releasing the laser just now, he has such ability. Even if we catch up with him for a short time, it is difficult to really capture them. Unless there is a strong warrior who can rush to his front at the beginning, so that he does not use this strange laser to push their ship away. As soon as these words came out, Ziyuan immediately grasped the hilt of his waist. Sister He, leave this matter to me. Next time I will sneak up to him and use all my strength to hold him back. At that time, as long as the sisters can support me in time, we will definitely be able to catch Luo Qi and his companions. At this moment, Ziyuan's eyes were more determined than ever before. At the same time, she felt ashamed. She thought that if she had not been surprised by Rosie's swordsmanship before, she might have had a chance to entangle Rosie. At that time, he naturally could not use strange laser beams to help himself and his companions escape. Well, if possible, I will work with you to stop him. He nodded, and then suddenly seemed to think of something, took out his Den Den Mushi and dialed a familiar phone number. Soon, a voice that was very familiar to Suru sounded on the Den Den Mushi. Xiaohe, what's the matter? Have you caught Luffy and the others? The voice opposite the Den Den Mushi was the voice of the Navy hero Garp. No, that Rosie showed his strange ability again, and he escaped. Escaped again. Xiaohe, what did that guy do? Released a powerful laser, covering me and the ship behind me. The power is very strong. I can't destroy it for a while, but if it were you and Sengoku, I think you would have the ability to do it. At this point, Suru sighed. Sengoku, Garp, Zephyr, Crane, none of these 4 Navy veterans are weak, and Crane's ability is even stronger to some extent. But in terms of destructive power, she is indeed a little lacking. Is that so? Then let's wait until I meet up with you before we go looking for trouble with them. I have arrived at Rogue Town now, and it shouldn't take long for me to meet up with you. Garp made his own suggestion. Of course, whether he wants to catch Luffy and his party, only he knows. No, I called to ask you to stay in Rogue Town. According to the current route, Luffy, Roche and his party are likely to go to Rogue Town soon. It's enough for us to search on the sea, you stay there to prevent them from entering the Grand Line. Crane said. Okay, I'll listen to you. Garp replied in a muffled voice. On the other side, the Golden Mary. Sorry, Melee, I'll fix it for you later. Rozzy, who had recovered his power, exhaled and turned to look behind him. Although he had paid attention, some of the wooden boards at the stern of Melee still had some cracks. He patted the hull of Melee and jumped back to the deck of Melee. Rozzy, you are so amazing. You can actually release such a huge laser, which is even bigger than the laser released by the Golden Deer. At this time, Luffy ran over, his eyes flashing with excitement. Rozzy, was that the Purgatory Warrior Heat Wave Cannon? I will be able to master that kind of power in the future. Like Luffy, Usopp couldn't help but look at Rozzy excitedly. As far as sailing is concerned, this Purgatory Warrior Heat Wave Cannon is still quite valuable. Zoro folded his arms and stared at Rozzy. Rozzy glanced at him. Although Zoro was talking about the Purgatory Warrior Heat Wave Cannon, Rozzy was more willing to believe that he was concerned about the moon-breathing swordsmanship he had performed earlier. You three, we are not out of danger yet. Go back to work and continue sailing. Nami bared her teeth and shouted at Luffy and others, almost collapsing. Nami is right, although I pushed those Marines back temporarily. But they may catch up later. I don't have the physical strength to do what I did just now. If you don't want to be held in the Navy's prison, you'd better get away from this sea area as soon as possible. Roche smiled at Luffy and others, raised his hand and made a gesture of being imprisoned. Usopp's body trembled, and he hurriedly called Zoro and Luffy back to work, and continued to control the Mary to sail away under Nami's command. But Nami, after issuing navigation instructions to Zoro and others, walked to Roche worriedly. Are you really okay? That move just now is more powerful than the Fairy's Glory I used, right? Thinking that she slept for a day after using the Fairy's Glory, Nami was a little worried about Rock's current situation. What's more, Roche released lasers for several minutes in a row. Don't worry, I'm quite confident in my physical fitness. But we may need to replenish a lot of food next. After that, we may need to go fishing to replenish the food reserves on the boat. As Roche was talking, a gurgling sound came from Rock's stomach. Nami, I'll go to the kitchen to get something to eat, and I'll leave the sailing to you. Roche touched his stomach, greeted Nami, and walked towards the restaurant of the Mary. Nami shook her head and was about to say something when another gurgling sound came from behind. Nami turned her head and saw Luffy looking at Roche with envy. Luffy, didn't you just eat? Why are you hungry again? Nami sighed deeply. But isn't it the same for Rosie? How can it be the same? He just used his powerful ability to help us escape from the Navy. But I'm really hungry. No, at least you have to help me sail now. A few hours later, Rosie, who had eaten and drunk enough and prepared a table of food for his companions, walked out of the restaurant of the Mary. Everyone, it's almost time to eat. Who are these two? Rosie raised his eyebrows and his eyes fell on the two strange men on the deck of the Mary. Rosie, they are my acquaintances when I was a bounty hunter. This one is called Johnny and this one is called Joseph. Zoro raised his hand and pointed at the two people and said. I see, since they are Zoro's acquaintances, why don't we have something to eat together? Rosie nodded slightly, and instantly remembered that there were indeed two such men in the original book. But what Rosie didn't expect was that even with the existence of his butterfly, they still met this bounty hunter duo. Then, how can I be so embarrassed? Johnny touched the back of his head and looked at Rosie, who looked kind, in fear. During the time on board the Mary, he and Joseph had already known Rosie and knew that he was a pirate with a bounty of 800 million berries. Facing such a high bounty, Johnny instinctively felt a little scared. Joseph nodded, and just when he wanted to say something, a feeling of powerlessness suddenly hit his heart. In just a moment, he rolled his eyes and fell on the deck. Joseph, what's wrong with you? Johnny fell to the ground and looked at his partner worriedly. Luffy, who was originally planning to run into the cafeteria, saw this scene and couldn't help but stop and looked over with concern. It looks like scurvy. If you can't eat fresh fruits and vegetables for a long time at sea, you will become like this. Drink this glass of lemon juice, then have a full meal, and then you will be better after a period of recuperation. Rosie walked up to Johnny and handed the lemon juice in his hand to him. Johnny was already panicking at this time. He didn't care whether Rosie was right or wrong. He took the juice and poured it into Johnny's mouth. After a while, Johnny was surprised to find that Joseph really opened his eyes and his face became better again. Without waiting for Joseph to jump around like in the original book, Rosie took his hand and walked to the restaurant. Luffy and others who were eager to taste the food naturally followed closely. Rosie, you know a lot about food, and the dishes you cook are also excellent. Why not hand over the kitchen of the Mary to you in the future? After a full meal, Nami patted Rosie's shoulder with a smile and said. Beside them, Zoro and Usopp also nodded repeatedly. Although Nami also cooked during the voyage, Rosie's cooking skills were recognized by everyone. What they don't know is that Rosie had good cooking skills before he crossed over. Not to mention that Sato Kazuma's template also has magic skills specifically for cooking. Adding the two together, Rosie's cooking skills are not top-notch, but they are also excellent enough to say that Rosie is the chef of the Straw Hat Pirates. He is qualified. However, Rosie doesn't want to prevent Sanji, who was originally a chef, from joining the team because of his own reasons. Of course, with Luffy and himself, two super foodies on the ship, Rosie would rather have a chef join the Straw Hat Pirates so that he doesn't always spend too much time in the kitchen. Forget it, I usually have to help everyone get familiar with the power of the heroic spirit template, which is a tiring job. So I think I may not have so much time to take care of the kitchen on the Mary. Rosie waved his hand and directly rejected Nami's proposal. What, you're usually free, and you didn't spend too much time helping us get familiar with our powers, did you? Nami frowned slightly and looked at Rosie's face suspiciously. You can ask me to cook 100,000 berries at a time. Rosie was not panicked at all, and smiled and raised a finger to Nami. 100,000 berries, why don't you go and rob them? Wait, we won't have to pay 100,000 berries for this meal, right? Nami's eyes widened, and she covered her skirt pocket with her wallet in panic. No, you're wrong, it's 100,000 berries per person. Anyway, everyone has received a portion of the funds from the Black Cat Pirates, and 100,000 berries is just a small thing. Rosie supported his hands on the dining table, opened a lady's wallet with cute patterns, took out a stack of berries and smiled at Nami at the same time. When was it stolen? Wait, did you use the steal skill on me? Nami's mouth was in an O shape. She never thought that she usually stole other people's wallets, but this time Rosie stole her wallet without her noticing at all. If you really use that skill, I think some of your private clothes may not be kept. Nami, you are not the only one who is good at stealing on this ship. When I worked in the world government, I did a lot of stealing. Rosie chuckled and put the wallet back into Nami's skirt pocket. In order to let Nami notice, he even deliberately patted Nami's leg. Nami blushed immediately, and she didn't know whether it was because she felt guilty about Rosie stealing her wallet or because of other reasons. Anyway, I've already taken the position of vice captain on this ship. It's more or less redundant to take the position of chef, so let's leave it to someone else. Luffy, what do you think? Roche looked at Luffy, who was still stuffing meat into his mouth, and asked. Well, although it's a pity that you don't take over the kitchen, Roche. But since you are already the vice captain, there is nothing we can do. But if we want to find a new chef, we should find a chef as good as you, Roche. Luffy cracked his mouth and showed a big smile. Everyone nodded when they heard this. After eating the dishes cooked by Roche, if the newcomers did not have the same or better dishes as Roche, it would be difficult for them to get used to it. Regarding the chef, I have a suggestion. At this time, Joseph raised his hand. Seeing everyone looking at him, Joseph said. In fact, not far from this sea area, there is a restaurant called Sea Restaurant. It is said that there is the best chef in the East China Sea. If you want to find a chef, you can try your luck there. As soon as this was said, Luffy immediately decided to stand up. Okay, Nami, let's go to that sea restaurant next. Go find a chef as good as Rosie. But before that, Rosie, can you make me another portion of this big bone meat? Rosie sighed, stood up and walked towards the kitchen. Sure enough, I still have to let Sanji take over this job. Single quote. If you tempt him with the color fruit, it should be easy to get him to join. Single quote. I don't know if Nami and Robin, who will join the pirate group in the future, will mind Sanji taking the color fruit. Single quote. If the color fruit can be used to make the Mary invisible, future voyages may save a lot of trouble. Single quote. Wait, if the Mary has a ship spirit in the future, can we let the ship spirit eat the color fruit? Single quote. In this case, the hull should also be able to become invisible. Single quote. Roche thought to himself. As early as the moment he joined the Straw Hat Pirates, Roche had already made plans to treat Mary's ship spirit well. Even if the hull of the Mary will disappear one day in the future, Roche will find a way to preserve Mary's ship spirit. As a member of the Companion, he believes that the system's ability can also work on Mary's ship spirit. In that case, he will be able to make Mary's ship spirit stay in the true sense. Perhaps, we can wait until the ship spirit of the Mary is formed and let him obtain the heroic spirit template, and then let him try the devil fruit. East China Sea, Sea Restaurant. Brother Sauron, Brother Luochi, everyone, this is the restaurant on the sea we were talking about before. How about it? It's not bad. Joseph jumped off the deck of the Melly and stood on the deck of Barati, the sea restaurant, and shouted to Razi and others. After getting rid of Suru, Gion and others, the Melee ushered in a peaceful voyage and finally reached the destination of the trip smoothly. What a big fish. So the restaurant on the sea is actually a fish. Luffy looked surprised, and there was a hint of drool left on his enlarged mouth. Luffy, that thing is not a fish you can eat. If you want to eat, go eat there. Rossi patted Luffy on the shoulder, jumped onto the deck of the sea restaurant with the suitcase containing berry, precious jewelry and devil fruits as usual, and waved to Luffy, Nami and others behind him. Nami looked at the suitcase that Luochi kept with her, and sighed again, secretly thinking that one day she would steal Luochi's treasure. Luffy and the others, who had already been impatient, naturally jumped down and walked towards the door of the sea restaurant with Luochi. When the waiter in charge of welcoming guests saw Luochi and others, he immediately reached out and politely led everyone to sit down in an empty seat in the restaurant. Rossi turned around and looked around. He couldn't help but feel a little surprised when he didn't see Iron Fist, Finbooty, who had the same title as Garp, nor Akin, who was discussed by many people in his previous life. Did we come too early? Single quote. Luochi thought doubtfully. Grandpas, I don't know what you want to eat. The small shop has everything, good quality and low price. Please feel free to order. At this time, a flattering voice pulled Luochi out of his thoughts. He turned around and saw a man dressed as a chef who looked a bit fierce. Rossi could see that he was the man named Paddy in the restaurant on the sea who always opposed Sanji and was greedy for money. Meat, I want meat. Luffy raised his hand and expressed his opinion without hesitation. Anyways, serve me a few bottles of wine first. Zoro smiled and said. No problem, gentlemen, but can I ask first, you should have berry, right? Paddy rubbed his hands, looked around, and finally laid his eyes on Razi, who had a suitcase beside him. Don't worry, Barry will take care of it. Razi opened the suitcase, revealing the neatly stacked berry banknotes on the surface. Bring over the best food you have here. Well, prepare 2 tables. When we finish the first table, we can serve the other table. Paddy's eyes sparkled, and he didn't react until Raza closed the suitcase again. No problem, sir, we will do it for you right away. Paddy shouted happily and immediately ran to the kitchen, shouting as he ran, for fear that others would not know the order that Luochi and others ordered. Hey, bring us the wine first. Zoro shouted, but Paddy had already run into the kitchen. In desperation, Zoro had no choice but to look at a waiter, wearing a neat black suit and walking to the table next to Razi and others with double the amount of juice. Waiter, bring us 5 bottles of wine. Zoro shouted. I think you misunderstood. I'm not a waiter, but the sous chef here. Besides, there are only a few of you, can you finish the 2 tables of food you ordered? The last thing I can stand in this restaurant is people who waste food. The waiter in a suit, Sanji, put down the drinks at the next table and turned to look at Zoro with a cold expression. Don't worry, we have 2 foodies here, there will definitely be no food left. At this time, Nami suddenly spoke. Sanji followed the sound and looked at Nami, his expression turned aside for a moment, and with red hearts in his eyes, he rushed to Nami and praised Nami's beauty. Even Nami was stunned by Sanji's sudden orgasm. Just when Sanji was about to confess his love to Nami on the spot, Zoro, who had just been ignored by Sanji, suddenly spoke. What? It turns out he's a waiter obsessed with women. Ha, you green algae head, what do you think? Stinky Kappa, do you want to fight? Rossi raised his eyebrows, looking at Zoro and Sanji who were suddenly touching their heads and looking like they were about to fight. Rossi had to sigh at the fate between them. Just when Luochi wanted to talk, the 2 of them separated. A man suddenly appeared from the side and kicked Sanji away. This person is none other than Chef Zapu, the owner of the restaurant on the sea, who is holding a box of wine. Old man, what are you doing? Sanji kicked his legs hard to stop, wiped the marks on his face, and looked at Zapu unhappily. Idiot, don't quarrel with the guests. Zapu snorted at Sanji and looked at Zoro apologetically. I am Zapu, the chef of this restaurant on the sea. Chapter 51. I apologize if that guy disturbed you. To show your sincerity, consider these drinks as gifts from me. With that said, he put the wine box directly into Zoro's hand. Oh, thank you. Zoro scratched the back of his head and put the wine on the table with some confusion. Old man, what are you doing? Why do you invite this guy to drink? If you plan to invite, you should also invite that beautiful lady. Sanji frowned, suddenly feeling that he couldn't understand what Zapu was doing. You know, Zapu has never treated guests before. Zapu did not answer Sanji, but glanced at Zoro, Nami and Luffy fearfully, and finally rested his eyes on Razi. I really didn't expect that my restaurant would be able to meet a group of big shots like you. Pirate hunter Zoro, who has a bounty of 20 million berries, Nami, the little cat thief, who has a bounty of 25 million berries, and you, Captain Luffy, who has a bounty of 30 million berries. Zapu said. On the side, Sanji couldn't help but frown even more when he heard this. He understood that this was Zapu's way of reminding him that these people in front of him were not to be trifled with. What? It's just a reward of 30 million. Sanji was about to express his opinions to Luffy and others, but Zapu interrupted him directly. And Your Excellency, the demon Rossi has a bounty of 800 million berries. Zapu said. 800 million. Sanji looked at Luochi blankly. At this moment, he suddenly remembered the reward order that the restaurant staff had discussed recently. There is indeed a man with a bounty of 800 million, and his partners are all pirates with a bounty of tens of millions. Is this guy? Single quote. Sanji swallowed and looked at Luochi's gentle smile. He couldn't connect him with the vicious pirate described on the wanted poster. Your Excellency, can you answer me a question? Are you here simply to have a meal? Zep asked. No, it's not. Rossi shook his head. Such behavior immediately put Zapu on guard. Actually, our main purpose is to find chefs who can become partners of the pirate group. Also, please ask Chef Zep to stop talking so loudly about our bounty. Otherwise, it may affect everyone's desire to eat. Rossi smiled and looked around at the nearby diners who looked at him in horror because of his conversation with Zapu. Hey, are you looking for a chef? This is a really interesting topic. I wonder, old man, if I can share a table with you and talk about this topic together. Zapu raised his eyebrows and glanced at Sanji who was not far away. It was a casual polite remark, but Nami suddenly spoke. Okay, of course no problem. She smiled playfully, pulled Zapu's sleeve and asked him to do it. However, since you are the chef here, you must be willing to treat as if you share the table with us. Can this meal be recorded on your bill? Zapu was stunned for a few seconds before reacting. Ha ha ha, what an interesting little girl. Okay, let's have a chat. If possible, I can recommend an excellent chef to you. The premise is that the chef is willing to leave with you. I see. Drawing the world's sea map, becoming the world's greatest swordsman, and becoming the pirate king are really great and difficult dreams. Zep put down the wine glass in his hand and looked at the passionate Luffy, Zoro, Nami, and even Usopp in front of him with admiration. With his experience, he can naturally see how seriously Luffy and others pursue their dreams. Although Usopp's goal of becoming a brave sea warrior is a relatively small dream, Zepp also admires Usopp's firm heart. Unknowingly, he thought of his unfulfilled dream. What about you? What kind of dream do you have to go to sea? To be honest, I don't understand why you would join a rookie pirate group with such great power. Zeppu raised his eyes and looked at Luochi seriously, and finally asked the doubts in his heart. If you want to talk about dreams of going overseas, of course you have one, and there are two of them. The corners of Rossi's mouth raised, and he put one hand on Nami's shoulder on the right and the other on Luffy's shoulder on the left. First, it is to support my partners to realize their dreams. As soon as he finished speaking, Luffy, Nami and others unconsciously showed smiles on their faces. Secondly, I want to explore various mysterious places in this world. In the legend, there is the Sky Island tens of thousands of meters high in the sky, the Fishman Island tens of thousands of meters under the sea, the buried treasure of Pirate King Roger, and the mysterious All Blue. Aren't these places worth visiting? After Rossi finished speaking, he showed a mysterious smile to Zeppu, who was directly opposite him, and Sanji, who was staying by Zeppu's side. All Blue. Sure enough, when they heard this word, both Zeppu and Sanji immediately cheered up. I didn't expect a wanted criminal like you to know All Blue. It's a great place. It is said that ingredients from all four seas will gather there. In other words, it is a treasure trove for chefs. Sanji, who was in high spirits, began to talk about All Blue and even his dreams. He was completely unaware of the thoughtful look on Zeph's face beside him. After a long time, when Sanji finally stopped, Zeph suddenly said, "Since you want to find All Blue so much, why don't you leave the sea restaurant now?" Old man, what do you mean? It literally means that your cooking skills are not suitable for staying here. Luffy and the others are looking for a chef, why don't you go with them? What do you mean my cooking skills are not suitable for this place? I am the sous chef of the sea restaurant. No longer, I will fire you as the owner of the restaurant. Speaking of which, you will become the sous chef just because I pity you. You are still far from cooking. Zeppu shook his head, looked at Luffy and said, "How about it, Straw Hat Boy, do you want to do me a favor and take the gangster away?" Originally, Zeppu thought Luffy would agree readily. After this meal, he also saw through Luffy's simple and pure character. However, Zeppu never expected that Luffy would show a look of disgust. "Hey, is your cooking not good? But we want to find a chef whose cooking skills can rival Rosie's." Zeppu opened his mouth wide, not knowing what to say for a moment. It's impossible that he just said that Sanji's cooking skills were not up to standard, and then turned around and said that his cooking skills were actually good. Isn't this just right? Since you already have an excellent chef over there, it doesn't matter whether I go or not. Sanji folded his arms and lay down on the chair, looking indifferent. You can't say that. I have things to do on the ship. If possible, I still hope to have an excellent chef come to our ship. Although Zeph said that your cooking skills are not good, I think this should be a lie. It is impossible that a person who has been determined to become the best chef since childhood has not made any progress after so many years. Roche suddenly said meaningfully, what do you mean? Do you still know about my childhood? I do know. After all, not long ago, Reiju asked me to bring her brother to say hello to you if I find her brother. What, you actually know Reiju? Sanji stood up in surprise, staring at Rock's eyes, as if trying to see if he was lying. Zeph, who was standing aside, saw Sanji's reaction and felt curious about Sanji's life experience for no reason. Yes, I met Germa 66 when I was in the North Sea before. Then we had some conflicts. Fortunately, I am quite strong. After beating up Vinsmoke Judge, I left the pursuit range of Germa 66 with Reiju. After I found a safe place, Reiju left. Now I am still a good friend of her. If it weren't for her bloodline that forced him to obey Judge's orders. I wanted to take her with me on the voyage, Rosie said while observing Sanji's reaction. Seeing Sanji's doubts, Rosie began to talk about Sanji's childhood. This was because Reiju was worried that Sanji would not trust Rosie when he met him, so she told Rosie some of Sanji's scandals. Sure enough, after hearing this, the doubts on Sanji's face disappeared on the spot. The whole person slapped his hands on the table, blushing and yelling. Okay, stop talking, I believe you. Zepp touched his beard, and seeing Sanji's expression, he knew that Rosie was not lying. At the same time, he was particularly surprised by Sanji's life experience. Who would have thought that the child he had rescued in the East China Sea was actually the son of the notorious Germa 66 in the North Sea? I didn't expect that you would actually meet Reiju. But what I didn't expect was that you actually beat up that fool judge. That's great, haha. Sanji's mouth corners rose, and suddenly he felt that Rosie in front of him was so pleasing to the eye. However, just when Sanji was happy that his hateful father was beaten, a noisy sound suddenly came over. Zepp frowned and turned around immediately. It turned out that at some point, a tall man had already kneeled at the entrance of the sea restaurant. Ask for flowers. Ajin, why is this guy here? Sanji lit a cigarette, looked at Ajin, and then at the man wearing a golden armor next to him. His expression was a little unclear for a moment. It seems like the man you saved before didn't just want that bowl of fried rice. Zapu said calmly. On the side, Luochi understood immediately after hearing this. It's not that Ajin has never been here before, but before they came to the sea restaurant, Ajin had already been here and was even entertained by Sanji. And now, he led his captain Crick to the sea restaurant again. Because of the arrival of Crick and Ajin, the surroundings were noisy. A group of diners and staff at the sea restaurant kept cursing Crick and Ajin, hoping to drive them away. Faced with this situation, Ajin begged, and Crick himself put aside his pride and put his head on the ground of the restaurant, praying that the restaurant on the sea could provide him with a piece of food. Rossi held his chin with one hand, looking at Crick for a while and Sanji for a while. Sure enough, after waiting for a while, Sanji couldn't help but got up and walked to the kitchen. The employees of the Hi restaurant, who had experienced the incident of Sanji making fried rice for Jin, naturally did not want Sanji to do such a thing. They came to Sanji one after another and used their strength to stop Sanji's footsteps. But in the end, Sanji still placed a plate of fried rice in front of Crick. Seeing this scene, Luochi turned to look at Luffy beside him. Luffy, what do you think of him? Can he join our Straw Hat Pirates? He's pretty good. Luffy nodded, obviously recognizing Sanji's unique chef spirit. Zapu heard the conversation between Luffy and Rossi, and a faint smile appeared on his face. At this moment, Crick, who had finished the fried rice, suddenly broke up Sanji to the ground, and even asked the sea restaurant to prepare a 100-point fried rice for them. Seeing this scene, Zapu sighed, stood up and walked to the kitchen alone. So, do you want to help later, Luffy and Rossi? Zoro put his hands on his shoulders and looked at Crick and Akin opposite him. Of course, we still have to take that Sanji away. Luffy smiled. Rossi nodded to Zoro, then looked at Nami beside him. Nami, how about we take off the golden armor from him later? As expected of Vice Captain Luochi, he and I have thought of the same place. Nami's eyes shone brightly. At this time, she was no longer afraid of Crick, who had a bounty of 17 million belly in front of her. The only thing she cares about now is the value of the gold on Crick. The corner of Luochi's mouth raised, looking at the background of Crick and Ajin leaving, he couldn't help but think of the man who was called the world's best swordsman. Judging from the current form, Hawkeye Mihawk should still appear. Single quote. Perhaps Sauron can make a breakthrough by fighting Hawkeye. Single quote. Coming. Luochi suddenly spoke. Are those members of the Click Pirates already finished their meal and planning to attack? Nami clapped her hands and stood up excitedly. As for the golden armor that Crick was wearing, she couldn't wait to take it into her own pocket. They have indeed finished eating, and they are noisy and ready to attack. But that's not what I meant when I said he's coming, but that the man named Hawkeye is here. A red light flashed in Luochi's eyes, symbolizing the domineering power of knowledge, and he turned to look at Zoro. Sure enough, after hearing the person Rossi mentioned, he immediately stood up and looked directly into Luochi's eyes. Rossi, are you serious? Would the world's best swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, come to a place like this? Just go and take a look and you'll find out. Suo, 173, Takashi, you know that I can see very far away with my haki. Rossi nodded to Zoro and walked towards the outside of the restaurant. Zoro clenched his fist and followed decisively. The same goes for Luffy, Nami, and Usopp. And when a few people just arrived outside the restaurant, a very fast sword suddenly passed by the pirate ship where Click was clamoring to attack the restaurant on the sea. Before Creek and the other pirates could react, their ship was cut off in the middle. Is this that man's slash? He is chasing me. Click looked towards the sea in the distance in panic, and sure enough he saw a man with a huge black knife on his back and eagle eyes approaching quickly on a raft. Why are you a man chasing us? Crick held his head in his hands and asked Hawkeye in pain. It's just boring. Hawkeye glanced at Crick coldly, then jumped up and arrived not far from Crick. Click fired at Hawkeye in panic, but Hawkeye blocked them all with the black knife behind him. Just when Hawkeye was about to execute Click, a slightly familiar figure caught his attention. He turned his head and quickly locked his eyes on Luo Qi. It's you. Luo Qi tilted his head, a little confused. Before Luo Qi could ask why Hawkeye looked so familiar with him, he had already slashed at Luo Qi. The powerful slash flew through the air, directly forming a crescent-shaped emerald green sword light more than 10 meters high and rushing towards Luo Qi. Luo Qi frowned. Although he didn't know why Hawkeye swung the sword at him, he quickly pulled out the famous sword Jinbaluo, and quickly used Heishimo's blood ghost technique to transform the long sword into one more suitable for using the Breath of the Moon appearance. Breath of the Moon 8-shaped moon dragon chakra tail. Single quote. Luo Qi shouted in his heart and waved the sharp blade in his hand from left to right. In the blink of an eye, a line accompanied by countless giant moon blades was formed. The two sword lights collided, directly triggering a huge whirlwind that swept around. The weaker ones fell to the ground involuntarily. Hey, your swordsmanship is pretty good. I thought you could only use the sixth form of the Navy, but I saw something pretty good. Hawkeye's eyes lit up and he looked at Roki in admiration. With his attainments in swordsmanship, he could tell at a glance that the Breath of the Moon sword style used by Luo Qi was impressive. Zoro, Nami and others all looked at Roki in confusion, and were surprised that Roki knew Hawkeye. Navy sixth form. Luo Qi twitched the corner of his mouth and began to understand why Hawkeye drew the knife on him. Well, let me confirm first. Why are you attacking me? Razi asked. Boy, do you think I can't recognize you after taking off the CP0 mask? After hearing what Hawkeye said, Luo Qi slapped himself on the forehead. At this moment, he felt quite a headache. Luo Qi, what's the matter with this? You, should you offend that powerful person? Nami grabbed Rosie's arm and asked with a worried look on her face. The name of the world's #1 swordsman is too great, and in addition, Luo Qi had previously promoted to the crew members the world's highest combat power. Therefore, even if Nami has not seen the true power of Hawkeye, she still has a general idea. At this time, seeing that Hawkeye seemed to be malicious towards Razi, how could Nami not feel worried? Well, this is all in the past. When I first entered CP0, the superiors above may have wanted to test me as a newcomer, or they may simply have wanted to kill me. So I was arranged to observe and evaluate the current Shichibukai, and I also took photos with me. Hawkeye said the rest. I was stabbed by him while I was investigating him. My camera was destroyed at the time. Fortunately, I took out the photos in advance. Rossi shrugged and said. Luo Qi's words made Nami despair and almost fainted. Shichibukai, 7 people. My Vice Captain Luo Qi, you must have offended the entire Shichibukai forces in this sea, right? Nami took Rosie's arm and shook it, her eyes almost filled with tears. After obtaining the heroic spirit template, she thought she had an easy start. But now it seems that becoming a member of the Straw Hat Pirates is a hellish start to a pirate career. Nami, you are so funny, hee. Luffy covered his face with a smile on his face, not at all frightened by Hawkeye's words just now. Rossi patted Nami on the shoulder and protected her behind her back. So, are you going to kill me now, Hawkeye? Let me state in advance that I no longer work for the world government. If you really want to cause trouble, you might as well go find the person who arranged for me to investigate the work of the Shichibukai. I can give you his business card. Luo Qi looked at Hawkeye seriously and said, although Hawkeye is very powerful, he is not worried that he will be killed by Hawkeye. Even if he loses to Hawkeye and is really killed, he still has the resurrection authority in the Sato Kazuma template, which will only consume one devil fruit at most. Before being killed by Hawkeye, he was confident in creating an opportunity for his partners to leave. I did want to chop you just now, but now I want to see your sword skills even more. Hawkeye said calmly and quickly waved the black knife in his hand again. The next moment, slightly smaller than before, but 3 flying slashes pounced on Luo Qi. Just when Rossi was about to wave the sword in his hand again, Sauron appeared in front of him. 3 sword styles. Breath of the Moon 3 forms hateful moon erosion. Hearing Zoro's sharp shout, the 3 samurai swords on his body formed an afterimage and he quickly swung 6 times in a row. The 2 crescent-shaped blade winds that were originally in the shape of a moon 3 directly turned into 6 and collided with Hawkeye's flying slash. Is he a swordsman from the same school as that guy? There is such a swordsman in the small East China Sea. Single quote. Is it this Rosie who taught well, or do they all have the same teacher? Single quote. But if it's just this level, it can't stop my sword. Single quote. Hawkeye's eyes fell on Zoro, and there was another person he was interested in. At the same time, just as Hawkeye thought, although Zoro's slash was sharp, there was still a gap compared to Hawkeye. The blade light swung by Zoro lasted in the air for a while before being broken by Hawkeye's flying slash. Seeing this scene, Zoro didn't think about it, and rushed out with his sword, using the 3 swords on his body to collide with the flying slash. In this world, the gap will not be that big. 3 swords style demon slash. Buzz. A stream of demon energy vacated from Zoro and condensed on his sword. The next moment, Zoro swung 3 swords, and finally guided the flying slash that Hawkeye casually slashed to the sky with difficulty. After doing all this, Zoro was also hit by the force brought by the flying slash and the deck of the sea restaurant Barati was destroyed. Even so, are you going, Zoro? Roche looked at Zoro, who was panting and ready to move, and asked. Don't stop me, Roche. On the first day of becoming a pirate, I told you that my target was him. Zoro took a deep breath and tried to keep his breath steady. You misunderstood. I won't stop you. I just want to tell you that if you want to fight, let go and fight. In this way, you may have a surprise. Roche understood that Zoro was a man who pursued the ultimate in kendo, and the heroic spirit Kokushibo he possessed was also a man who pursued the ultimate in swordsmanship. If he was stopped at this time, Zoro would never be able to fully master Kokushibo's power, nor would he be able to enter Kokushibo's heroic spirit mimicry state. Even, he could obtain Kokushibo's abnormal vitality that could be restored even if he was beheaded. Of course, Roche also understood that it was impossible to stop Zoro at this time. What he had to do was to save Zoro when he might be killed. Hey, that man cut off a ship easily. And just now, you were clearly against the odds. You rushed forward, are you going to die? Sanji, who was not far away, looked over and said to Zoro in great confusion. Don't stop him. Luffy held Sanji's shoulders, his face serious, I believe in my partner. Thank you, Luffy. Zoro smiled and glanced at Sanji. Besides, I'm not the same guy who talks about dreams. What do you mean? Sanji wanted to question Zoro. However, Zoro had already jumped on the outer deck of the sea restaurant and jumped to the platform where Hawkeye Mihawk was. You are very idle, right? The world's #1 swordsman, come and compete with me in swordsmanship. Zoro clenched the double swords in his hands and said to Hawkeye with a grim smile. Another man who doesn't know how high the sky is, kid, if you are smart, you should be able to understand the gap between us from what happened just now. Hee, I only know that I went to sea for you. Really, then what is your goal? The strongest, but your sword is not as strong as that of Luo Qi. Surpassing you is equivalent to surpassing him. Fantasy. Hawkeye shook his head and inserted the black knife in his hand back behind his back. Then he pulled out the knife from the necklace around his neck in Zoro's astonished eyes. Seeing this scene, Luo Qi sighed. Even though Zoro has shown the ability to cut out a flying slash, in Hawkeye's eyes, he only used a knife to deal with the column. Let alone what Zoro thinks, even Luo Qi, who called the Kokushibo panel to Zoro's hand, can't stand it. What do you mean? Zoro shouted at Hawkeye with anger. Sorry, I don't have a smaller knife to deal with you. Hearing Hawkeye's words, Zoro's veins burst out. He stopped talking and rushed towards Hawkeye with his knife. In the blink of an eye, the two fought together. From time to time, sharp flying slashes flew out from the battlefield between the two and fell to the surroundings, stirring up waves. Rosie's observation hockey was running to the limit, focusing on the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye so that he could intervene at any time. At this time, the people of the Click Pirates were completely scared. If they stayed, they would probably be killed by Hawkeye later. Escape, but the ship was gone. For a moment, the pirates were in a dilemma and could only look at Captain Click helplessly. Guy, you destroyed my fleet, right? Ignore me, right? Then you will die together. Click directly brought out a dangerous gas bomb and aimed at the battle between Hawkeye and Zoro, intending to poison Hawkeye out of anger. However, before he could do anything, a fist filled with anger hit him in the face. Rubber gun, asshole, don't disturb my partner's duel. Luffy roared, and directly used his rubber ability to get close to Crick and others. Even without using the spike fist, Luffy's ordinary rubber fist alone had deformed Crick's face. His originally ugly face became even more hideous. Who are you? Crick stood up angrily and wanted to punch Luffy. However, a lightning bolt suddenly fell from the sky and hit Crick. The strong current instantly penetrated Crick's body, and with Luffy's attack, Crick could no longer hold on and fainted on the deck. Although I sneer at men's duels, since they are partners, there is nothing I can do. I can't let you disturb Zoro, who is a road idiot. Nami took back the card that summoned the lightning bolt and rubbed her nose. But the next moment, she waved her hand and shouted to Luffy. Luffy, help me throw that guy over here, I want to check how much the gold on him is worth. Oh, Luffy nodded, without doubting anything else, and threw Crick to the deck of the Bharati restaurant on the sea. However, this move completely angered the cadres of the Crick Pirates, the Demon Mannequin and the Iron Wall Bow. The two jumped to the deck of the Bharati restaurant on the sea, trying to take back Crick. At the same time, other members of the Crick Pirates also surrounded Luffy. Get in the way. Rubber machine gun spike fist. Bang, bang, bang. Luffy swung the rubber machine fist with spike fist effect at the Crick Pirates that surrounded him. A large number of members of the Crick Pirates, who were not strong to begin with, fell down instantly. For a moment, the remaining pirates did not dare to step forward, and at the same time did not dare to disturb the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye. At the same time, Nami and Usopp. Nami, Usopp, those two guys are left to you. I have to keep an eye on Zoro now. Roche stared at the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye with his eyes, and said to Nami and Usopp beside him without looking back. Although Hawkeye did not use his full strength, the sword force was not so clear that it could not be seen clearly. But watching the battle of Hawkeye, who integrated the powerful sword skills into the flat attack sword skills, Roche still did not dare to be careless. For fear that he would accidentally swing out a flat attack sword skill that could cut meteorites into pieces. Therefore, in order to prevent Zoro from having an unexpected situation, at this moment, in addition to concentrating his observation hockey on Zoro and Hawkeye, he also used the power of Kokushibo called Transparent World. Like the observation hockey, Transparent World can also enhance people's perception, and even allow Rosie's eyes to penetrate the enemy's skin and see the enemy's internal situation. The two powers of enhanced perception are superimposed together, and Rosie can see more of Hawkeye's swordsmanship, and at the same time, he feels more and more that Hawkeye is worthy of being the world's #1 swordsman. Zoro is still a long way from Hawkeye, even though he can now perform a flying slash and can be called a swordsman. Leave it to me, Vice Captain Rosie. Nami smiled mischievously, facing the rushing Akin and Baloo without the slightest fear. Usopp, on the other hand, saw Akin's devil-like expression, and his heartbeat began to speed up again. Hey, you guys stop right there. Do you want to attack the lady? At this time, Sanji lit a cigarette and stopped in front of Akin and Baloo. Sanji, get out of the way, I have to take Captain Crick away. Akin stopped 1 meter away from Sanji, looking at Sanji, who had given him a meal, with complicated eyes. Baloo saw that his boss Akin had stopped, so he naturally did not move forward. However, his eyes were fixed on Crick, fearing that he would never get up again. I'm sorry, Akin. Now you are a well-fed person, and I have no reason to act according to your request. What's more, you are now planning to use the weak lady as your opponent. If you want to hurt Miss Nami, you must crawl over my body. Sanji waved his hand and said to Akin with a determined look. But he was only handsome for 3 seconds, and he quickly turned his head and looked at Nami with a wretched face. Ms. Nami, please rest assured, your prince will definitely protect you. Yes, I understand. Nami waved her hand and looked at Sanji speechlessly. But someone helped to stop the enemy, so Nami was naturally happy to be free. She squatted down and planned to take off the valuables such as the golden armor on Click. Tisk, it's a bit heavy, Usopp, come and help. Nami, we are fighting now. It's not too late to get the spoils later. Usopp smacked his lips and decisively rejected Nami's request. Nami could leave the enemy to Sanji without worry, but he didn't have the confidence. He always felt that as long as he didn't look at Ajin and Baloo for a moment, his heart would not be settled. What does it matter? Don't they look weak anyway? Nami didn't care whether Usopp was afraid or not. She directly pulled Usopp and started to pull off the golden armor on Click's body with her. Asshole, stop it. Seeing Nami's rude behavior to his captain, Ajin couldn't bear it anymore. In a rage, his speed suddenly increased and he appeared next to Sanji almost instantly. What? Sanji widened his eyes and immediately raised his leg to kick Ajin. However, how could he stop Ajin's attack in a hurry? Sanji stumbled, and Kin had already passed him by and rushed towards Nami and Usopp. Asshole, don't even think about going over there. Sanji's eyes were red, and he completely abandoned his defense and rushed towards Kin. However, no matter how much he wanted to stop Kin and protect Nami, he couldn't do it. In front of him, Baru, who was wearing a shield, stopped him. At the same time, Nami and Usopp. Why is this guy here? Single quote. Usopp glanced at Kin, who was looking like a devil, and the Emperor engine was completely activated. A thunder drum full of pressure suddenly sounded. The invisible pressure caused Kin's body to pause for a moment. And it was this pause that doomed his defeat. Card magic, the moderation of the fool. Nami raised her hand and looked at Usopp, and Kin, who was stunned, cast a card magic. A cloud of mist emerged from the card she threw out and directly enveloped Ajin. What is this? Wait, this feeling of powerlessness. Is it hypnotic gas? Ajin held himself up to prevent himself from falling, and looked at Nami fiercely. Because Crick had used hypnotic gas before, Ajin directly linked Nami's power with the hypnotic gas used by Crick. Cunning woman. Ajin roared angrily and tried to rush out of the smoke. However, at this time, exploding star. Boom. Usopp raised his slingshot and fired a powerful shot at Ajin. The exploding star, which was made from Naomi's explosive arrow, instantly caused a huge explosion on Ajin. It directly blew his body into the air. This was not over yet. Nami summoned another card, summoning a blazing flame that fell on Ajin. At this moment, Ajin, who was already in a bad state due to the hypnotic smoke and the exploding star, could no longer hold on. The moment he fell on the deck of the Bharati restaurant at sea, he had already lost consciousness. Is this over? Sanji, who had just repelled Bale, stared at Ajin who fell at his feet. He never thought that the person he wanted to protect would actually knock a strong enemy to the ground in such a short time. To use Razi's words, you should say that you protected a lonely person. Usopp came to Sanji with the sound of the Emperor engine and patted his shoulder. Let me deal with this enemy too. As he said, Usopp raised his slingshot and aimed it at Bale's head. Baloo, who was already afraid of Ajin's defeat, now suddenly faced the pressure of Usopp's Emperor engine. He could no longer bear the fear and turned around and ran away. Hee, turning your back to the sniper is not a good habit of Denuo. After Usopp finished speaking, he directly released the explosive star and hit the back of Bale's head. The powerful explosive force, coupled with the weak point attack, made Bale follow in the footsteps of Akin. It's really easy. Usopp shrugged and retracted the sound effect of the Emperor engine. He turned around and saw Sanji looking at him in surprise, so he laughed and gave a thumbs up. How about it? We are very powerful. Sanji twitched his mouth, looked at Usopp in front of him, and then looked at Nami who was busy looting Click's property. At this moment, even he couldn't help blushing. At the same time, the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye finally came to a turning point. Three Swords style, Moon-breathing land type Tokyo Lone Moon Mujian. Zoro quickly swung out the 3 swords on his body, and swung dozens of slashes in a blink of an eye. However, his speed was not faster than Hawkeye after all. All his slashes were picked up by Hawkeye, and even the next moment, the dagger in Hawkeye's hand had pierced Zoro's chest. Zoro. Usopp lay on the edge of the boat, looking worriedly at Zoro in front of him. 5. Don't worry, he's fine. 6. Rozzy pressed Usopp's shoulder, signaling him to calm down. 3. Usopp was slightly relieved when he saw that it was Rozzy who was speaking. 2. He understood that Rozzy would not lie at this time. 3. At the same time, Hawkeye frowned slightly. 6. Boy, why don't you hide away? 1. I don't know. I just know that if I avoid it, I will lose something important, whether it is a goal or the trust of a close friend. 3. Really, he is really an interesting young man. The corners of Hawkeye's mouth raised, and he smiled for the first time. He pulled out the dagger that stabbed Sauron in the chest and put it away, then took the black knife from behind and pointed it at Sauron. You are a good strong man. Although your swordsmanship is not as good as that of Luo Qi, you are qualified as a swordsman. Strong man, let me use this world's best knife to end you. When Zoro heard Hawkeye's words, a smile immediately appeared on his face. He didn't say much, but crossed the 2 knives in his hands and began to spin rapidly 190 degrees. In an instant, small crescent sword chi continued to overflow from his side, leaving scratches on the deck. 3 sword styles, breath of the moon 3000 worlds. When the momentum was gathered to the limit, Soren's body turned directly into a black-red light that ordinary people could not capture and rushed towards Hawkeye. Eagle Eye's eyes were focused, and he rushed forward, bent down, and swung his sword in one go. In an instant, the bodies of Sauron and Hawkeye passed each other. On Zoro's side, the huge sword energy he waved passed directly across the sea, cutting a gash several meters deep in the sea. But on Hawkeye's side, there wasn't much movement. Just when people thought that Sauron had the advantage this time, the 2 knives in Soren's hands suddenly broke. You must be defeated. Zoro sighed, took out the word, Hidao, in his mouth and inserted it into the scabbard. Then he turned around and opened his hands, exposing his body defenselessly to Hawkeye. What does this mean? Hawkeye frowned. For a swordsman, a sword wound on the back is a shame. Zoro grinned, as if he was not discouraged by defeat. You are very good. Hawkeye smiled with satisfaction, then swung his knife and cut a hole in front of Sauron that almost penetrated his entire chest. Zarin. Luffy roared angrily, activated Uru's heroic spirit mimic form and directed a flying kick about 10 meters long at Hawkeye. Then, his whole body jumped up and jumped towards Eagle Eye. Hawkeye's eyes lit up when he saw the strange flying energy blade displayed by Luffy. However, the world's best swordsman is still the best swordsman. He just waved the black sword in his hand slightly and cut off Luffy's attack. At the same time, Rossi suddenly appeared next to Luffy and pressed him down. Raza, what are you doing? Luffy raised his head and looked at Rossi in confusion. Don't worry, Zoro is fine. Don't forget, he is a man with the power of a ghost. Rossi patted Luffy on the shoulder and motioned for him to look at Zoro. Sure enough, when Luffy looked at Zoro, he found that he just knelt down on one knee in pain and did not really lie down. Hawkeye also glanced at Zoro in surprise. His family knew about his own affairs, even though he had avoided Soren's vital point with the blow just now. But it was enough to make a strong man fall unconscious. However, when he came to Sauron, even though he received this blow, he was unable to make him fall. What a strong man. So, do you still want to fight? Hawkeye looked down at Zoro, who was bleeding all over the floor, and said calmly. Now I have been defeated. I have fully understood that I am not your opponent now, but one day I will stand in front of you, challenge you, and then defeat you. Zoro clutched his chest and stared at Hawkeye fiercely. When Hawkeye heard this, not only was he not angry, but he became more and more satisfied with Sauron. Just when he wanted to say a few words of encouragement to Zoro, Rossi, who was standing next to Luffy, suddenly spoke. Zoro, is this the end? Zoro looked at Rosie with some doubt. Rosie smiled and continued. It was you who chose the breath of the moon and Kokushibo, right? But now, you still can't seem to use this power well. That man was willing to become a demon in pursuit of power. I originally thought that you were similar to him in that you were willing to become a pirate in order to become the world's #1 swordsman. But now, you seem to be a little worse than him. Or, you have enough backbone, but you can't compare with Luffy or Nami in talent. Obviously, those two can already enter that state. Rosie stared into Zoro's eyes while speaking. If he could, he didn't want to say these words to Zoro. However, Rosie didn't want Zoro to continue to stagnate in mastering Kokushibo's power. If he couldn't enter Kokushibo's mimicry of heroic spirit even when he challenged Hawkeye with his name at stake, then Rosie didn't know what kind of situation would make Zoro go further. Rosie, are you exaggerating? Zoro has fought desperately. Nami pouted and waved to complain to Rosie. Yes, Vice Captain, since the battle is over, don't continue. Luffy, you also talk about Rosie. Usopp shouted to Rosie and Luffy in despair. However, Luffy ignored Usopp's shouting, but just covered his hat and looked at Zoro in front of him seriously. At this moment, Zoro's eyes widened, and he opened his mouth and gasped, and his state of mind seemed to have been disrupted by Rosie's words. Hawkeye beside him watched with interest, without any movement or saying a word. Although he didn't know what Rosie meant, he understood one thing. That is, Zoro might still show other powers. As time passed, Rosie could clearly see the increasingly strong cold ghost aura on Zoro. Seeing that the time was ripe, Rosie jumped in front of Zoro and stretched out his hand to him. Become a ghost, Zoro. Buzz. A dull sound suddenly burst out from Zoro's body. The heroic spirit engraved on his chest skin suddenly glowed red. In the blink of an eye, the red mist enveloped Zoro's entire body. Rosie's mouth curled up when he saw this scene, and he looked up at Hawkeye. Can you please open his eyes, Hawkeye Mahawk? Hearing this, Hawkeye smiled. Interesting, let me be your sparring partner. Well, I'm also interested in what kind of power he should hide. But after the matter is over, you have to let me see your sword. Hawkeye said. Rosie nodded slightly, jumped hard on the deck with both feet, and instantly returned to the deck of Baratie. On Zoro's side, the red mist that enveloped him suddenly shrank and completely sank into his body. At the same time, his brand new figure appeared in front of Hawkeye and everyone. The cold breath, the face that was completely different from that of a human and 6 eyes, at this moment, Zoro had completely turned into a ghost, and completely entered the mimicry state of Kokushibo. What is that? How can that 3-sword swordsman have 6 eyes? My goodness, why do I feel that this guy has suddenly become gloomy? Don't say it, I think so too. Not only that, did you see that his originally injured body actually recovered? Seeing Zoro's current state, people began to discuss. Interesting, this state, is it the power of the devil fruit? If it has 6 eyes, it can't be a spider devil fruit. Hawkeye asked with interest. Is it a spider devil fruit? Try it and you will know. Zoro grinned, and the blood-colored weapon instantly wrapped around the Wado Ikimonji in his hand. Just like Rock's transformation of the long sword in his hand, he also used the blood demon art to transform the Wado Ikimonji into a different shaped blade with a staggered blade. Is this blade the same as Rock's just now? Hawkeye groaned. Just at this moment, Zoro had already swung the long sword in his hand to attack. Breath of the Moon 8th form Moon Dragon Wheel Tail. Swish. Zoro's blade quickly swept from left to right, forming a huge crescent arc and slashing towards Hawkeye. Hawkeye put away the sword and stood up. Although it was simple and direct to stop Zoro's attack. But the curiosity in his eyes became more and more intense. The swordsmanship that Roche performed just now, it seems that in order to perform such swordsmanship, you first need to turn the sword into this shape. You can't use it originally, but you can only use it after it becomes like this. However, if you only know this move, the result will still not change. Hawkeye said. Of course, this isn't the only move. Breath of the Moon 9th form Fallen Moon Lien Mian. Zoro swung the long sword in his hand quickly, forming a staggered sword energy to block Hawkeye's retreat, and then launched a fierce slash at Hawkeye. Hawkeye was very interested and naturally swung his sword to fight back. In a blink of an eye, the two fought dozens of times. For a moment, the two were completely surrounded by a hurricane of sword energy. Some flying templates were caught in the hurricane of sword energy and were immediately crushed. People looked at the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye in amazement. They couldn't understand why Zoro, who was just easily defeated by Hawkeye, suddenly had such a powerful force. He was able to fight Hawkeye on equal terms. What surprised them even more was that even if Hawkeye slashed Zoro, his injuries would recover quickly and he would fight Hawkeye again. Razi, can Zoro win if he becomes like this? Nami asked curiously. At this time, Hawkeye and Zoro had been fighting for almost 10 minutes. During this period, Zoro suffered some slashes that were considered serious injuries to ordinary people. But even so, Zoro would recover quickly. Seeing this scene, Nami couldn't help but think that Zoro could win. No, he can't win. Although Zoro is very powerful now, he seems to be evenly matched with Hawkeye. But Hawkeye is far from serious now. As long as he wants, he can end the battle at any time, even though Zoro has super strong recovery ability now. Not to mention, his physical strength is gradually unable to support this recovery ability. I think Zoro understands this too. Rosie shook his head and said. Nami turned her head and saw that the recovery speed of Zoro's wounds began to slow down. Please give flowers. Since you know that he can't beat Hawkeye, why do you let him fight Hawkeye? Why does that green algae head continue to fight Hawkeye regardless of life and death? At this time, Sanji, who had been watching Zoro's performance, finally couldn't hold back the doubts in his heart. Zoro is fighting for his dream, and I just want to help him realize his dream. But you, Sanji, you obviously have a dream you want to realize, why don't you want to move forward? Roche asked. Humph, my dream is to stay in the sea restaurant as my sous chef. Sanji turned his head, his expression looked very serious. Hee, being the sous chef of the sea restaurant is fake, but you really want to be filial to Zeph. Hey, what are you talking about? How can I be filial to this old man? It's really awkward, Sanji. But it can't be just you, both you and Zeph are awkward people. Hearing this, Sanji and Zeph looked at each other, not knowing what to say for a moment. Roche shook his head and continued. You clearly want the junior to pursue all blue on your behalf, but you don't know how to say it clearly. You can only pretend to dislike the junior and force him to pursue his dream. The junior is the same. He thought that he could be filial to his elders if he stayed, but he didn't know that helping the elders to fulfill their dreams is also a kind of filial piety. Whether it is the elders or the juniors, they can solve the problem by talking it out. But they dragged it into this state. After saying that, Roche sighed again. At the same time, the battle between Zoro and Hawkeye has also come to an end. Looking at Zoro, who has exited the Kokushibo state and fallen again, Roche decisively jumped up to the front of Hawkeye and threw Zoro and his own sword to Luffy and others. Sanji looked at Roche, who was talking to Hawkeye in the distance, and thought of what he said before, and he was speechless for a while. Until Zeph came behind Sanji and put his hand on his shoulder. Razi is right. We should have a good talk, Sanji. Hawkeye, I'm here to fulfill my promise. Rossi stood opposite Hawkeye with a simple smile on his face. Really, but you gave up your sword, didn't you? Do you want to use your physical skills to compete with me? If I did that, you would probably chop me. That's right. Hawkeye nodded affirmatively. For Hawkeye, the agreement he made with Luochi just now was an agreement between swordsmen. If you want to fight, you have to fight with a sword. If Luochi doesn't use the sword, it's a breach of contract. Hawkeye will no longer be merciful by then. Don't worry, knife, I have a stronger one. Luochi smiled, and then a burst of golden light suddenly appeared around him. Hawkeye frowned slightly and nodded. He could clearly feel that Rossi's current state was very similar to that of Sauron when he transformed. A second later, when the golden light from Luochi's body dissipated, he had already entered Zaraki Kenpachi's heroic spirit mimicry. Ha ha, ha ha ha, then, let's fight. After entering the heroic spirit mimic state, Luochi's state also received some images of Zaraki Kenpachi, becoming more murderous. Seeing Hawkeye in front of him, he didn't say much nonsense and directly took the sword that originally belonged to Zaraki Kenpachi and struck Hawkeye on the head. Before the sword arrived, Luochi's spiritual pressure wrapped around the sword had turned into golden sword light and pressed towards Hawkeye. Hawkeye's eyes narrowed and he swung his knife upward decisively. Boom! There was an explosion, and the ground beneath their feet collapsed instantly. How about it? I told you I would bring out a good knife, Hawkeye. Luo Qi pointed the long knife in his hand at Hawkeye and said, "If you don't consider the damage on the blade, your knife is indeed a good knife. Even if the blade is damaged, it is still a good one." After Luo Qi finished speaking, he held the knife with both hands and slashed at the position of Eagle Eye group. Even though he had the template of Zaraki Kenpachi, Luo Qi did not dare to be careless in the face of the world's #1 swordsman. Directly uses the dual-wielding knife mode. The blade fell, sparking a burst of golden light. Hawkeye felt the power of Luo Qi's sword swing, and he felt very interesting and at the same time increased the force of swinging the black sword. This time, the collision of the two long knives actually rolled up a burst of emerald green and golden light pillars and rushed towards the sky, directly scattering the clouds on the horizon. People around who had seen this scene couldn't help but be stunned. They could not believe that what they saw in front of them was actually humanly possible. Hey, are you kidding? Is this still something a human can do? Sanji, who had just finished talking to Zapu, opened his eyes wide and said in shock. He originally thought that he had overestimated Luo Qi enough, but now it seems that his estimate can be said to be wrong. The world's greatest swordsman and a pirate with a bounty of 800 million. These two are indeed beyond the comprehension of our level. Zapu shook his head, hoping more and more that Sanji could get on Luffy's ship. After watching Soren's battle just now, he had already guessed that Soren's power was closely related to Razi. Since the Straw Hat Pirates have good partners, there may be a chance to make Sanji stronger. How could Zapu be willing to let it go? It's really a powerful force, but it shouldn't be your full strength, Razi. Zoro held his body up with difficulty and muttered while watching the scene of Razi and Hawkeye fighting together. In the image of the heroic spirit space, Zaraki Kenpachi was able to release the power of the Zanpakuto, but Zoro did not believe that the current Rossi could not release the Zanpakuto. What, isn't this his full strength? Sanji looked at Zoro in shock. This time, not only Zoro nodded, but also Luffy nodded heavily. Luo Qi is very strong. He won't lose, Luffy said confidently. This guy is really a pervert. Seeing how confident Zoro and Luffy were, Sanji had to start to believe it. At the same time, Rossi and Hawkeye were on the battlefield. That slash just now looked a bit like using a sword. But if it's just like this, there's no way you can satisfy me. Hawkeye was holding a black sword. Even when faced with Luo Qi's sword that could cut off the sea, he did not retreat at all. That was a confident blow for me just now. Is there still nothing I can do to satisfy you? Luo Qi shook his head. Even so, Luo Qi was relieved after considering that the enemy in front of him was the world's #1 swordsman. After all, although he has entered Zaraki Kenpachi's mimicry state, this does not mean that his strength has also reached Zaraki Kenpachi's state of strength. In this case, even though I'm still a little immature in mastering it, I have to use that move. The corners of Luo Qi's mouth split open, revealing a devilish grin. Suddenly, a powerful aura spread out from Luo Qi's body and enveloped the surrounding sea area for several kilometers. The people affected felt a sense of depression in their hearts instantly, and even breathing became extremely difficult. Overlord Color Domineering. No, it is similar to Overlord Color Domineering, but it is different. Hawkeye frowned slightly, staring directly into Rosie's eyes. Luo Qi laughed ferociously, and instead of explaining to Hawkeye what spiritual pressure was, he gave a sharp shout and roared like a beast. Swallow it, Yi Sha. A shrill roar. Eagle Eye was shocked to find that Luo Qi's power had more than doubled again. Not only that, the originally slender long knife in his hand began to change its shape. In just 4.5 seconds, it transformed from a slender blade into a huge beheading sword. What happened to your knife? Hawkeye frowned, and with his perception, he could naturally feel the abnormality of the blade in Luo Qi's hand. Haha, didn't I tell you, I have a great knife in my hand. Luo Qi laughed evilly, clenched the handle of the knife with both hands and suddenly raised it with force. This time, even Hawkeye was lifted into the air by Luo Qi's brute force, and the height was still rising. Luo Qi kicked hard on the deck with both feet. The powerful force caused the deck to collapse instantly, and at the same time, he quickly chased Hawkeye high in the sky. Keep fighting, Hawkeye. It's strange, it was a nice sunny day, why did it suddenly thunder? Aboard a Navy warship, Navy recruit Naomi frowned and looked up in confusion at the direction from which the thunder came. But the next moment, her eyes widened in horror. Then, what is that? Naomi shouted loudly, watching in fear as the more than 10 meters long and extremely oppressive emerald green wind blade in the sky fell towards the Navy warship she was on. Just when Naomi felt desperate, Guion suddenly passed her and jumped up, rushing directly towards the falling wind blade. Her eyes narrowed, and she quickly pulled out the sword from her waist. Then the rich aura of armed domineering quickly climbed onto the blade, dyeing the sword pitch black. Drink, Guion yelled, holding the knife in both hands and slashing it from bottom to top, covering the emerald green wind blade. Guide it to the sea aside. Even with Guion's consumption, when the emerald green wind blade fell on the sea, it still left a hole visible to the naked eye. Lieutenant General Guion, are you okay? Naomi quickly ran to Guion and looked at her cold face with admiration. Be careful, it's not over yet, Guion replied, raising the blade in his hand again. Naomi blinked and looked at the sky again. In an instant, countless emerald green wind blades and golden wind blades appeared in front of her eyes. Guion didn't say anything more, and the long sword in his hand slashed out a series of afterimages, triggering a series of flying slashes and rushed high into the sky. Either annihilate the wind blades falling from high altitude, or guide them aside. Fortunately, the speed at which the wind blade fell did not last long. After a while, the wind blade in the sky fell to another location. Phew, it's finally safe. What's going on in this sea area? Why are there wind blades falling from the sky? While Naomi breathed a sigh of relief, she began to look at the sky angrily. These are not wind blades, but flying slashes wielded by powerful swordsmen. Guion, you should recognize him. At this time, Crane walked over. The emerald green flying slash smells like the swordsmanship of Mihawk the Hawkeye. As for the golden slash, I can't tell who made it. Guion shook his head and said, the golden slash can be performed by the once legendary pirate Golden Lion. He touched his chin and thought for a while. Sister you mean the person fighting Hawkeye as the Golden Lion? Maybe, but no matter who is fighting Hawkeye, we have an obligation to find out. Guion, let everyone drive the ship over. After we get to a suitable place, you and I can use the moonstep to go up and have a look. Understood, Sister Guion said, and immediately took Naomi to carry out Crane's order. Meanwhile, Sea Restaurant Barati. The battle moved from the sea to the sky. Even if it was still sunny, people in the Sea Restaurant Barati could hear bursts of thunder-like sounds coming from the sky. Along with the sound came the fierce hurricane. Weak people have no choice but to enter the interior of Barati, and they will be blown away by the strong wind. Sanji twitched the corner of his mouth and looked at the sky, but he couldn't clearly see the movements of either Rossi or Hawkeye. He could only see afterimages passing by in the sky from time to time, and from time to time, huge flying slashes about 10 meters long would hit the sea in the distance, cutting and separating the sea. Sanji even felt that Rossi and Hawkeye deliberately avoided Barati with their slashes. Otherwise, Barati, the sea restaurant, would have been destroyed long ago. It's really exaggerated. Your partner is simply a monster. Sanji took a long breath and turned to look at Luffy, Zoro and others. I said, Rosie is very strong. Luffy held down his hat to prevent it from being blown away by the wind. Unlike when Zoro and Hawkeye fought before, Luffy at this moment was not worried about Rosie's life safety at all. Even though the one fighting Rosie at this moment was the one standing at the top of the kendo. This is the existence standing at the top of the sea. If you haven't been to the Grand Line, you will never know what kind of power the strong people on the sea over there have. No, maybe even if you enter the Grand Line, you may not meet such a powerful strong man. Zapu sighed. At this time, Usopp retracted his gaze from the sky and looked at the sea in the distance. It was this look that made him widen his eyes. Luffy, Nami, Zoro, something bad is going to happen. Look over there. Usopp raised his hand and pointed to the sea in front of him, saying in panic. What's going on, Usopp? Wait, what is that? Nami was about to complain to Usopp, but when she looked in the direction of Usopp's finger, her eyes widened immediately. The Crane's warship, are they catching up? Not good. Luffy, Zoro, Usopp, let's go back to the Mary now and get ready to sail. As soon as Rossi comes back, we'll leave here. After saying that, Nami took the lead and ran towards the Mary with Usopp. Luffy and Zoro nodded. They also understood what they should and shouldn't do at this time. However, Luffy just took a step and turned to look at Sanji. "Sanji, come with us and chase your All Blue," Luffy said with a smile. Sanji looked at Luffy's sincere face, then looked at Zeph beside him, and was caught in a dilemma for a while. "Go, Sanji, go see the ocean for me." Zeph raised his hand and pushed Sanji, with a concerned smile on his face. "Old man." Sanji looked at Zeph with complicated eyes. After the conversation just now, the two of them were more frank with each other. Sanji naturally understood Zeph's true thoughts. But even though he knew Zeph's thoughts, Sanji was still reluctant to leave the sea restaurant. "Speaking of which, I just heard that you seem to have a dream of gaining invisibility in addition to looking for All Blue, right?" At this time, Zoro suddenly spoke. "Huh, why did you mention this?" Sanji looked over in confusion. "Nothing, I just thought of the devil fruit that Rosie got that can make people invisible." "What, Rosie has the invisibility fruit? Wait, didn't he eat the fruit?" "No, Rosie has the special ability of invisibility, so there is no need to eat the fruit. He has the ability to be invisible. How enviable. Well, since you are short of a chef, then I will be your chef reluctantly. The premise is that Rosie can give me the devil fruit. If you want the fruit, go to Rosie and ask for it yourself." Zoro glanced at Sanji, and without saying anything more, he turned around and jumped onto the deck of the Mary. He, then let's go too." Luffy patted Sanji on the shoulder, and then used a rubber arm to wrap around Sanji's waist and took him back to the Mary. Zep shook his head on the side. Seeing Sanji's performance just now, Zep began to wonder if he had entrusted his dream to the wrong person. Just when Zeph was thinking about which was more important to Sanji, finding All Blue or having the ability to be transparent, Sanji's voice came from the Mary. "Old man, thank you for taking care of me all these years." Zeph looked up and found that Sanji actually wanted to kneel down in his direction. "Well, Sanji, be careful not to catch a cold," Zeph said with relief. As expected of the world's #1 swordsman, Hawkeye Mihawk, he has a really powerful swordsmanship. Single quote. "Such a man is hard to deal with even with Kenpachi Zaraki's Shikai." Single quote. Roche sighed in his heart while swinging the sword with both hands. Although he doesn't have the power of Kenpachi Zaraki to easily break meteorites after his Shikai, he is definitely not weak. But in fact, Hawkeye still seems to be at ease. But thinking of Hawkeye's posture of easily breaking meteorites in the original work, Roche understood. At this time, he had been fighting with Hawkeye for more than 10 minutes. If the two had not intentionally guided their power, the sea restaurant not far away would have been destroyed long ago. At the same time, Roche also felt the strong consumption brought by using the Zaraki Kenpachi heroic spirit template. Just when Roche was thinking about when the battle would end, Hawkeye suddenly stopped on his own initiative. "Huh, don't fight anymore." Roche put the long sword on his shoulder and asked with a frown. "Although I still want to continue fighting, the conditions no longer allow it." "Roche, you are very good, I look forward to your return to the New World. When the time comes, I will come to you to finish this unfinished battle." Hawkeye smiled at Roche and looked at the transparent petal under his feet with interest. "Your power to build a foothold in the air is very interesting, but even if you don't provide me with a petal, I am not without a way to fight you." After saying that, Hawkeye jumped directly from the petal built by Roche with spiritual pressure and fell to the sea. "If I don't provide you with a petal, your attack may fall on the restaurant on the sea." Single quote. Roche complained in his heart. Seeing Hawkeye leave, he also planned to disperse the template of Kenpachi Zaraki. At this moment, two familiar figures suddenly broke into Rock's field of vision. And two violent gusts of wind suddenly surrounded Roche from the left and right. Roche looked closely and frowned even tighter. "That's true. I finally know why Hawkeye left. See you again, Vice Admiral Guion, Vice Admiral Suru." Roche shook his head and put the beheading sword on his shoulder with a helpless look. At the same time, the observation haki that was originally concentrated because of the battle with Hawkeye suddenly dispersed and went to the Mary below. After confirming that Luffy, Nami and others were fine, he breathed a sigh of relief and looked at Guion and Suru, looking for a chance to get away from the two. After a big battle with Hawkeye, he didn't think it was the right time to fight Guion and Suru. Yeah, see you again, Roche. Suru smiled, stepped his feet in the air, and rushed towards Roche directly using the moon step. Looking at the strange light condensed in Suru's waving hand, Roche immediately realized that it was the power of Suru's washing fruit. Without hesitation, he turned around and blocked Suru's attack with his Zanpakuto. Although Suru's wash fruit can even soften iron weapons, Luochi doesn't think that this power can soften Kenpachi Zaraki's Zanpakuto, which has already been released. And this is indeed the case. Suru originally expected Luochi's weapon to soften and continue to apply the power of the wash fruit to Luochi's body. However, she found that the weapon in Luochi's hand completely blocked the spread of her wash fruit, let alone applying the power of the wash fruit to Luochi. Even softening the weapon in Luochi's hand can't be done. Almost at the same time, Gion had already swung his sword to Luochi's shoulder. Luochi was not afraid either, and directly raised his right hand to block Gion's slash with his body. Luochi, don't try to escape this time in the same way as last time. No matter what, we will catch you. Similarly, your companions can't try to escape. Gion waited for Luochi with his eyes and said with a serious expression. Rosie, surrender. I don't know why you're fighting Hawkeye. But you should have consumed a lot of energy now. If we continue to fight, the result won't change. We can even ask Hawkeye to turn around and continue to deal with you. Suru shifted his gaze from the Zanpakuto in Razi's hand to Razi's face, and even planned to persuade him to surrender directly. Forget it, Vice Admiral Suru. I don't think Hawkeye will listen to you. If you really want him to listen, don't you give him a mandatory summons for the 7 warlords. Although I did consume a lot of energy, it doesn't mean I can't fight on. As for wanting to catch my partner, it's not an easy thing. Rosie raised the corner of his mouth, and a strong aura suddenly burst out of his body. Just when Gion and Suru thought that Rosie was about to attack, he suddenly opened his mouth and shouted loudly to the people below. Luffy, take everyone away first, I will catch up. Rosie's roar, as the spiritual pressure dissipated, soon reached the ears of Luffy, Nami and others. Gion and Suru frowned, and both increased the strength in their hands to attack Rosie. Don't even think about escaping. Neither you nor your partner. Gion shouted, raised his hand and made a powerful slash. Suru also turned his body, intending to avoid the weapon in Rosie's hand and directly hit Rosie with the power of the wash fruit. Dinos. Rosie glanced at Suru, chose to avoid her attack, and caught Gion's slash with her chest, which was condensed with a powerful spiritual pressure coat. The powerful force instantly chopped Rosie away. However, when Luochi flew out, he had already stepped on the moon step to the back of Luochi's flight, intending to stop him from escaping. Luochi chuckled and directly dispersed the heroic spirit template state of Kenpachi Zaraki. He frowned, although she didn't understand why Luochi's clothes suddenly changed, when she saw the strange Zanpakuto in Luochi's hand disappear. She immediately focused her eyes and rushed towards Luochi. Also rushing up was the angry Gion. Luochi looked at Crane, then at Gion, and finally reached out to Gion. Steel, activate. Gion, who was about to slash at Luochi with his sword, suddenly felt his body light up, and the necklace originally hanging in front of him disappeared. But the person she was about to swing her sword to suddenly had a necklace in her hand that she was very familiar with. Seeing this scene, even Gion couldn't help but shudder, and his movements paused for a moment. Luochi seized this opportunity and kicked Gion with a halo kick, and used the moon step to break out of Gion's stunned state. However, just when Luochi was about to fly past Gion suddenly came back to his senses and slashed away the Arashi footwind blade kicked by Luochi with a sword. Then he swung his knives several times in a row, forming a dense flying slashing net, forcefully forcing Luochi back. At the same time, his figure was only 1 meter away from Luochi's back. Feeling the strong wind behind him, Luochi turned around and faced Hihi in a stealing posture without thinking. Seeing this, he quickly stopped and kept a meter away from Luochi. His eyes were wary of looking at Luochi and the necklace on Luochi's left hand. She thought of what happened to the new recruit Naomi. Raza, don't go too far. His eyes widened, and his originally kind face turned out to be a bit ferocious at this moment. She saw what Luochi did to Gion just now. Although Gion did not encounter Naomi's situation this time, Who knows whether Razi will do what he did to Naomi next time. Now seeing that Luo Qi actually wanted to do the same thing to an old man like himself, how could he not be angry? As long as you let me go, I will naturally not continue to steal from you. Luo Qi smiled and turned to look to the other side, also staying at Guion, 1 meter away from him. It's you, Miss Guion, you really surprised me. You were able to react so quickly even though your private necklace suddenly left your body. It was really eye-opening for me. Rossi didn't know that when he learned what happened to Naomi. Guion was already mentally prepared to face Luo Qi and encounter the same situation. That's why she reacted quickly after her private panties left her body. Guion himself couldn't be happy about Luo Qi's praise. While she was using the moon step to stay in the air, she raised the long knife in her hand and pointed it at Luo Qi. Deng Tuzi, you can continue to use this ability from now on. Even if you take off all my clothes, I won't have any reaction. Anyway, you have seen all of my body a long time ago. You have even taken possession of my body, right? Guion shouted sharply. I don't quite understand what you said. Rossi frowned. Do you still want to deny it? Reiju told me that the pattern you wrote on my thigh represents the number of times you violated me. At this point, Guion's chest began to rise and fall, obviously he was extremely angry. Reiju just said this to you. What do you mean? Do you mean you did other things to me? No, what I want to say is, didn't Reiju tell you that I was joking with you, just to make you angry and get revenge on you for chasing me? Reiju didn't tell me this. Haha, stop making excuses, Razi. Your character can be seen from your behavior of casually stealing women's private clothes. Continuing to defend will only make you look ugly. At this point, Guion had no intention of continuing the conversation with Luo Qi. With incomparable determination in her eyes, she stepped towards Luo Qi with her legs in the air. Reiju, this woman is cheating on me. Single quote. Luo Qi complained crazily in his heart. Until now, he still didn't know that Reiju only told Guion the first half of what he left. As for the second half of the explanation, she didn't say a word. Having said that, looking at the rushing Guion, CJEF, Luo Qi also understood that there was no benefit in explaining now. He focused his gaze and directly activated the power of the heroic spirit, Robin Hood, to summon the noble phantoms, Prayer Bow, and the Faceless King. Before Guion's attack could reach him, Luo Qi put the hood of the Shameless King on his head. Then, he disappeared directly from the eyes of Guion and he. This also directly led to the failure of Guion's attack. Invisible, Guion and Suru were stunned for a moment, and their haki immediately reached its limit. Soon they discovered Luo Qi, who was doing a free fall towards the sea. Such a domineering invisibility ability, I'm afraid ordinary people who see and hear haki can't detect his aura. Single quote. Is it that cloak? No matter what, this man must not be allowed to escape. Single quote. He looked solemn, speeding up again and chasing Luo Qi with Guion. Her family knew about her own affairs, and he understood that she had clearly used the haki of knowledge and information before. But after Luo Qi put on the cloak of the Faceless King, Crane lost track of Luo Qi for a moment, and it was not until he increased the operation of the haki that he saw and heard that Luo Qi was discovered. Sure enough, I still found it. Single quote. Luo Qi glanced at Guion and Suru on both sides, and while sighing in his heart, he raised his right hand and fired several poisonous arrows from the prayer bow at the two of them. After that, he picked up a poisonous arrow from the prayer bow and turned around and rushed towards Guion. Guion just swung his sword to chop down several invisible poisonous arrows, and then felt the approach of Luo Qi's aura. She didn't hesitate, and the long knife in her hand turned into a stream of light and stabbed forward. Seeing this scene, Luo Qi didn't need to dodge, or even use armed haki to defend himself, and directly received Guion's straight thrust with his chest. In an instant, a stream of bright red blood flew out and fell on Guion's face, which was obviously dazed. Luo Qi, who was in the invisible state, smiled slightly and stabbed Guion's vest directly with the poisonous arrow he was holding tightly. The fierce wind instantly brought Guion back to his senses. She wanted to pull out the long knife, but found that Luo Qi's other hand was holding the blade tightly to prevent her from pulling it out. In desperation, she could only arm her left hand with armed color hockey and block the crossbow arrows thrust by Luo Qi. But even so, Rosie's poisonous arrow, which also contained aura of armed domineering, still pierced Gion's skin, leaving an obvious purple mark on her skin. It's done. Single quote. Luo Qi was overjoyed and immediately let go of Gion's sword and took a big step back, narrowly avoiding the crane's attack. At the same time, under the power of Hei Shimo's ghost, the stab wounds on Luo Qi's body began to recover quickly. Gion, are you okay? Seeing that Gion was injured, Suru looked over worriedly. Don't worry, Sister He, it's just a skin injury, huh? As Gion was talking, he suddenly felt something strange coming from the wound. What's wrong, Gion? Crane asked while continuing to attack Luo Qi. Sister He, be careful of his attacks, they are poisonous. Gion took a deep breath and continued to swing his sword to attack Rosie, lest he find a chance to escape. However, when Luo Qi is in an invisible state, both Gion and Crane need to spend more energy to sense Luo Qi's existence. For a moment, it was not so easy for the two of them to attack Luo Qi. It can only temporarily ensure that Luo Qi cannot leave. Poison. Crane frowned and decisively used his ability in the direction of Gion, unleashing a string of foam-like objects. When Luo Qi saw this, he immediately launched a few consecutive kicks to blow away the foam objects. Although the poison of the prayer bow cannot be solved by ordinary means. However, Crane is a person with the ability to wash away the fruit of washing, which can wash away the dirt in other people's bodies. Luo Qi did not dare to bet on whether Crane's ability could be effective against the poison of the prayer bow. Now, he is expecting Suru and Gion to have some flaws because of the poison issue. Lieutenant General He, I still know something about you. You actually want to stop me, so don't think you can spare the time to detoxify Lieutenant General Gion. Luo Qi smiled. I see, is this your purpose, Rosie? Should I say that I am worthy of being from CP0? Even though I have become an excellent swordsman, I am not as proud as an ordinary swordsman. Invisibility, stealing, poison, you are willing to use them all. He stared at Luo Qi with a cold expression and said, Don't provoke me, I won't accept your tricks. Both of you are going to arrest me, can't I still use all my means? Luo Qi smiled and fired several more invisible arrows at Gion and He, causing the two of them to either dodge or block. Now that they knew the arrow was poisonous, and without knowing the ingredients of the poison, the two of them naturally did not dare to use their bodies to catch Luo Qi's arrow. But even so, the unexpected actions of Gion and He made it impossible for Luo Qi, who was in the invisible state, to find a way to escape. As expected of a candidate for admiral and a chief naval officer, he is truly a troublesome person. Single quote. Do you want to use the noble phantasm, prayer bow? Single quote. Luo Qi thought to himself and glanced at the crossbow in his hand. No, if you use the noble phantasm now, you may not be able to hit Gion. Single quote. Even if I hit it, I wasted too much energy, and I might not be able to escape from the crane. Single quote. Sure enough, we still have to find another way. Single quote. After thinking about it, Luo Qi turned around again and shot countless poisonous arrows, forcing Gion and He back slightly. At the same time, on the other side, Zoro, turn the helm to the left, Sanji, turn the sail to the right. These marines are really haunted. In this case, even if Luo Qi asks us to leave, we can't leave. Nami complained while summoning thunder to attack the female marines who were attacking on Moon Steps. Don't worry, Miss Nami, I will protect you. Sanji's eyes sparkled with love and he said to Nami without hesitation. I hope everyone will support it and subscribe more.